Okay, friends and family, let's look at the TOEFL. We're going to have a quick overview of the test, and I'll answer some basic questions too. Now, the total test takes about 3 hours to complete, but please allow 3.5 hours, 30 additional minutes for check-in. Okay, so there are 4 sections in the TOEFL iBT test. The first section is going to be the reading. The second section is going to be the listening. After the listening, you will have a 10-minute break. After your 10-minute break, you're going to do the speaking section. And finally, you'll finish the test by doing the writing section. Now, we're going to look at every single section in a little bit more detail, and later in the course, we'll look at them in extreme detail and learn those strategies that you need to get the best score in the TOEFL. Here we go. Let's carry on. And let's look at the reading. This is the first section of your test. Now, in the reading section, normally you get 3 reading tasks to do. But sometimes TOEFL wants to test out a reading section, a reading part, a passage with questions, a task, if you wish. So what they do is where you normally get 3, they'll give you an extra 1. So now instead of 3, you have to do 4. They'll give you extra time to do that additional 4th task. So don't worry about time. You will get extra time. Normally there are 10 questions per task, per reading task. Okay, and if you get 3 reading tasks, you'll have 54 minutes to do your 3 tasks. If you get the extra experimental reading task, the 4th one, they will give you extra time, up to 72 minutes, to do all 4 reading tasks. So, now the reading section, you can get a maximum of 30 marks for this section. Normally there are 3, but remember you could get an extra additional task, which is not scored. This extra task, you don't get any points for it. Extra time is given for the experimental task, but remember, you don't know which one of the 4 the experimental task is. You don't know which one. So you have to answer every reading task to the best of your abilities, using the strategies and the tricks you will learn in this course. Okay? So, this is an example of one question. Remember, this is an IBT exam. It's an internet-based test. You're going to do it on a computer. Okay, as you can see, you have a question, right? And you have to choose among 4. And here is the reading. Everything is on the computer. This is an example. Great. So, moving on to the listening. This is the second section. Like the reading, it's very similar. You might be given an additional experimental task. It's possible. But normally you get 3 lectures. Okay, and for every lecture there are 6 questions. Normally you get 2 conversational based tasks. For every conversational based task there are 5 questions. So in total, normally you do 5 listening tasks. But remember, they could give you an additional experimental lecture. Again, it is not scored, but you don't know which one it is. So you have to answer every single listening task to the best of your ability. The same goes for the conversational based task, listening task. If you have to do additional experimental tasks, again, you don't know which one. They're random. Okay, you will be given extra time. Okay, so now note taking is going to be essential in the listening section. I would say note taking is probably the most essential skill you will need for the TOEFL test. And I'm going to help you understand how to take notes. I'm going to give you tips and tricks for that. Let's look at an example. This is a listening example. All right, you will have your headphones on You will listen to an audio track. Important, you can only hear the audio once. In other tests like Cambridge, for example, you can listen to the audio twice. In the TOEFL, you have one opportunity. That is why note-taking is essential. So you will hear the audio, and when the audio is finished, the audio track is finished, you will be asked a set of questions, which you will then have to answer. We will look at all the different strategies later. Great. Let's move on to the speaking. So you've finished the listening, you have a 10-minute break, and now after your 10-minute break, you have the speaking section. Great. So in the speaking section, there are 4 tasks you have to do. You're going to have to do 1 independent task and 3 integrated tasks. There are no extra tasks. There are no experimental tasks here. You will have 17 minutes in total to finish all 4 tasks. As in all the other sections, you can get up to a maximum of 30 marks for this section. Okay, so now the skills that will be tested in the speaking, okay, you will need to be able to read, listen, and then speak in response to a question. The first independent one is you just hear and you read the question, and you will need to speak into a microphone. It will then be recorded, and then you will get your mark, for example, for that specific task. Note-taking, again, as in the listening, is crucial, essential, fundamental. Okay, and we will look at strategies, so I can't wait to help you with that. So that is the speaking part, the speaking section. Let's move on to the final section. Before we do that, here is an example of the speaking. Okay, you will get preparation time and you will have to speak for 45 seconds. We will look at the strategies you need to get the best score in the speaking section. Great. Writing. Good. The writing section consists of 2 tasks. Number 1, the integrated task, and number 2, the independent task. You will have 50 minutes in total to complete both tasks. So the whole writing section. Okay, so again, as in all other sections, you get a maximum of 30 marks for the complete writing section. Okay, in the writing section, obviously you need to be able to write, but in addition to being able to write, you have to be able to read, listen, and then write a response to a question. Okay, again, what is essential? Note-taking is essential. Without note-taking, you will not get a good score at all. Believe me, I've seen it happen hundreds of times. Okay, so we will look at the strategies you need for that. Here is an example. Okay, this is the integrated part. Okay, you will read text. Okay, first of all, you will get an audio. Now you read the text and you'll get the audio, and based on what you heard, based on what you read, you will have to write a piece of writing. So we will look at all those specific strategies that you need. Okay, so that was a quick overview of the 4 different sections of the TOEFL test. Now we're going to go into much more detail and learn exactly every single strategy you need to get the best score. Are you ready? Let's go. Okay, friends and family, I would like to show you what an TOEFL iBT test looks like. Okay, so you will be at a computer. You'll have to do your test on a computer. Okay, and this, what you see in front of you, this is a TOEFL preparation software. So if you go to cambridge.org, if I'm not mistaken, you'll be able to get access to this software. Why not use it? Okay, so but it is based on the old TOEFL. Okay, remember TOEFL changed in 2019. So we're going to look at the new TOEFL, but still the software is very helpful in helping you understand and practice for the day of your test. Not much has changed in the test, mostly the speaking part, but it's basically all else the same, just time management is a little bit different. But the content in itself is the same. Okay, so now what can you see? Okay, so this, for example, is the beginning of a reading section. So you'll be giving a reading task. Look at all that reading that you have to do. I've got some great tips because normally, if you know the tips and the strategies, you don't have to read everything. You don't have to. But first, you need to learn the tips. Okay, so now you would go straight to the question by clicking continue. Okay, and as you can see, we have a question. You've got 4 options right there. It directly, paragraph 1 is marked with an arrow. You're going to have to focus on that paragraph right there. Okay, you can scroll up and down. Most importantly, please look at that. That is a timer. A timer is always going to be visible because time management is essential here. It is really, really important. Okay, so you would go through the questions and you would answer the different questions, for example. Okay, and if you're not satisfied, you can go back and you can change that question. Imagine you have some time left and you want to review, you can change. You can always change your answers. So you would carry on. Okay, you would carry on. So 16 of 39, etc. You would carry on until you get the next reading. You would answer all these questions, or you could go back again. You would carry on, carry on. There are 10 different types of questions, and so you need to learn 10 different strategies in order to do these questions. So that would be the end, and now you have a new reading, and you would carry on. Remember to look at the clock. And you would do the same for the second and the third reading. So now I wanted you to have a look at what it looks like. You can get access to the software at Cambridge.org, if I'm not mistaken, CambridgeEnglish.org. Well, if you do a little bit of research online, you can get access to that. I'm not allowed to share this. That's why I can't just give you a link. But if you do some research, investigate a little bit, you'll be able to track this down. Okay, friends and family, so now we're going to look at more detail at the reading section, and you're going to learn the 10 different question types, 10 different strategies, tricks, techniques to help you ace this part of the exam, to get the best score. Fantastic. Okay, see you in reading type, question type part 1. So, what can you do to get the best possible score? Okay, there are certain essential skills you need to get the best possible score in the TOEFL. Okay, so let's look at those 2 essential skills. For example, the most essential skill is note taking. This is going to be crucial for you. Okay, so some people don't like taking notes, but I can guarantee you that if you don't take notes, your score will drop. You can get a much higher score if you take notes. I say this, and all the other TOEFL teachers, masters say exactly the same. Even if you're not comfortable taking notes, you're going to have to learn. Okay, you're going to have to practice it. Okay, your note-taking skills might not be perfect at first, but the more you practice, the better you're going to get. And we're going to look at a few things that will help you take better notes. So a lot of people say, oh no, I'm not going to take notes because if I take notes, I'm distracted and I can't listen. Yes, but if you don't take notes, how are you going to remember information of a 2-minute lecture? It's impossible. No one can do that. Not even a native. I can't do that. So if most people can't do that, unless you are a genius, and you might be, okay? Well, anyway, you have to take notes. So let's look at that. So you are allowed to take notes on paper during the test. You are not allowed to keep your notes after the test. So being able to take notes effectively while you listen greatly increases the odds of you correctly answering certain questions. Note-taking is extremely helpful in the listening, speaking, and writing task. Yes, they are. Okay, this is not optional. You have to take notes. Obviously, this is on a computer. So if you're a fast typer, great for you. Okay. Now, the TOEFL iBT test is an internet-based test and requires test takers to use a keyboard. Being able to type fast is a helpful skill to have when doing the writing tasks. So there are plenty of free online typing tools and courses you can do to increase your typing speed and accuracy. So keybr.com, that's a great place. I mean, I've used it myself to increase my typing speed. Okay, have a look at that. So now, note-taking tips. Write phrases, not full sentences. You don't have time to write sentences. You have to be able to take short notes. Only record the key words that you need to get the idea of the point. Skip words like the and or a that don't add additional meaning to the content or to the lecture. Okay? Take notes in your own words. Paraphrasing is always an important skill for any test, especially the IBT, the TOEFL IBT. Paraphrase what you hear so it makes sense to you. It helps you to understand and remember what you hear. Okay, so let's look at a few examples here, note-taking examples. So, for example, ETC, that's a common one. Okay, now paragraph, instead of saying paragraph, write down para. Example, information, just write down info. Okay, NB, note well, or important, or maybe just an exclamation mark if you wish. Okay, so shorten your words, shorten them as much as possible. So these are my note-taking strategies, but you can invent your own note-taking strategies and your own abbreviations and acronyms for shorter words. The better you are at taking notes, the higher your TOEFL score will be, guaranteed. Now, note-taking symbols. Here are some examples that I use. This symbol equals, is equal to, is the same as. For example, the opposite would be just a line through it. It's not equal to, it's not the same as. Instead of writing and, more, plus, just a plus sign. Okay, instead of something is greater than or more than, just use the symbol, or less than as well. You've got minus. You've got a right arrow, which could mean anything you want it to mean. For example, it gives, it's the result of something it produces. Okay, instead of saying that something increases, an arrow up or an arrow down. Okay, so now there are hundreds of these. You have to practice, try to practice listening to some lectures and using these note-taking symbols to improve the amount of information you can put down in a limited amount of time. These are some examples. Here are some examples of note-taking strategies that you should apply during the listening, speaking, and writing tasks. The better your notes are, the higher your TOEFL score will be. Okay, so for example, if you're listening to a lecture and they're talking about homeschooling, this is a very good way. This is a way. It's not the way, it's a way to take down notes. Some people like taking down notes like this, whilst other people like taking notes down like this. This example right here, this is great for the conversational based listening tasks, which you will need in the listening section and also in the speaking section. It is if you have two people having a dialogue, a conversation, you need to be able to take notes of what every single person is saying, because you're going to need that information in your answer when you speak. Without this information, your speaking score will drop. The more information you can add, the higher your speaking score will be. It's as simple as that. So I think I've made myself very clear on how important note-taking is. Okay, so now we're going to look at the details, at the nitty-gritty of the reading section. Okay, so I hope you're ready. Let's go. Okay, friends and family, so we're going to look at how to best approach the reading section. Before that, I've got some things that I want you to understand, which will greatly help you understand how things in the TOEFL work. Okay, this will all give you an advantage. So now, if you, for example, should you read the entire passage? Let's have a look at that. Okay, so now you see this passage here. Okay, I'm just going to stop the clock there. And you see all of that text. That's a lot to read, isn't it? I mean, come on. That's way too much to read. Okay, so the quick answer is that no, you don't have to read the entire passage. Now we're going to look at how to navigate the text. Okay, so now let's have a look. Very important. It's too much to try to remember. So basically, what you have to remember is that all texts follow the same format. You've got the introduction, okay, and then you've got a paragraph, you've got another paragraph, etc. Paragraph, 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 and then you have that conclusion right there. So the best way to navigate this would be looking at the introduction. And this, what you will find in the introduction is the introduction thesis, meaning what is everything we're going to read about? What is it about? It's like the preview of what you're going to read. So in introduction, you will normally find the introduction thesis at the end before the paragraph. So the introduction is extremely important because it includes very important information about the entire passage. Okay, so now if we look at topic sentences, what are topic sentences? So let's go back. Topic sentences are the first parts of each paragraph. Of every paragraph, you've got a topic sentence. Now, the topic sentence is the most important part about that paragraph. Everything said after the topic sentence basically supports that topic sentence, reasons and examples being. So you will find a topic sentence at the beginning of every single paragraph. And that's the most important part of that paragraph. And if you go down, that there is the most important part of that paragraph. And it continues, that there is the most important part of the paragraph. And we can continue that being the most important part of that paragraph. And obviously, your conclusion is also an important part. So do you need to read everything? No, you don't need to read everything. You can read the introduction and then the topic sentences to get a good idea of the most important information about this reading passage. And obviously, the last sentence, which is the summary or the conclusion. So that is important to remember because you can save a lot of time. Instead of reading through everything, you're going to read through the most important information through locating the topic sentences. Okay, so now, okay, so eliminating tips. You have what goes through the mind of the person who creates a test or the TOEFL test specifically. Let's have a look at how they think. Okay, so now if, for example, let's have a look here, for example. Okay, let's have a look at a question. Okay, and another question here. Okay, so the test creator's job to create questions for a piece of text, obviously. Okay, so what they love to do is they love to confuse you. They love to make things as appetizing as possible. So what they would do is, if you look at these 4 examples, you've got a question here and you've got 4 examples. What they would do is they would get exact word for word pieces of the text, put them in an option, and because you see that, you might think, well, that's logical, that's the correct answer. No, it's too easy. The test maker specifically did that to try to trap you into answering incorrectly. So what am I trying to say? Normally, what the test maker would do is use paraphrasing. They would use synonyms and paraphrasing, and that is most likely, more often than not, the best choice. If you see something that is too good, it's too perfect, then it's because the test maker is making it look much more attractive to get you to choose the wrong answer. So here is another thing that the test maker also does. If you see words like always, only, and never, be careful. That is a trap. You can automatically and immediately understand, I know, I've not even read this, but I know that that is not an option. Excuse me. Because it's impossible for anything in this passage to be always, only, or never. So this is a very important tip. If you see words like always, never, and only, these are eliminating words, you can eliminate that option, which leaves you with better chances of getting the correct answer. Okay, so that is why it's very important. Now we're going to move on to the different reading question types. Okay, so moving on. Okay, so now we've looked at that. Please remember, be careful. Word for word traps, be careful with them, and watch out for eliminating words like always, only, never. If you see them, avoid them. They're not options. They're not the best options. Okay, so there are 10 different reading question types in the TOEFL. Every question type has its own strategy. You being able to identify every question type increases the odds of you using the correct strategy and getting the answer correct. Okay, so we're going to look at much more detail. This is a quick overview. You have number 1, factual information questions. Number 2, negative factual information questions. Vocabulary questions, inference questions, rhetorical purpose questions, reference questions, sentence simplification questions, insert text questions, prose summary questions, and fill in the table questions. So we're going to look at all these strategies right now. Okay, so now before we get there, get pen and paper ready because you're going to have to take a lot of notes. These strategies are crucial and you need them if you want to get a high score. So let's look at factual information questions, the strategy you need, how to identify or recognize them, and what approach you have to apply to them. See you in the next video. Hope you're ready. Let's go. Okay, there are 10 different reading question types in the TOEFL. Let's look at number 1. It is defined as factual information questions. Now, you are asked to identify a specific piece of information that is mentioned in the passage. These type of questions focus on facts, details, or definitions. These questions are one of the most common types of questions in the whole reading section. You're going to find a lot of them. Now, how can you recognize factual information questions? You can recognize them easily through the following. They're normally asked in this way. According to the paragraph, which of the following is true of Or, according to the paragraph, X occurred because According to the paragraph, X did Y X did something because. According to the paragraph, Y did X do something. Finally, the last way you can identify or recognize this factual information type question is the author's description of X mentions which of the following. So this is how you identify the questions are asked like this. If you see a question asked like this, you know it's a factual information question. And now we're going to look at what strategy you need to apply to this factual information type question. Okay, first you need to recognize the keywords in the question. So if you look at the question, according to the passage, how did Noah Webster go about defining American English? So the keywords I've chosen are how, Noah Webster, defining American English. Remember that they could paraphrase this. You can't paraphrase Noah Webster, but you can paraphrase this possibly. Okay, so first of all, don't look at the options yet. Focus on the question, find the keywords. That's what you need. Okay, so now we can scan and locate the keyword sentence in the passage. Okay, so instead of reading everything, they will normally say in the passage, marked with an arrow, and you can scan it. So Noah Webster helped define American English. So there you go. We have located the question part. Okay, we've located this topic sentence. Okay, so he labored for 22 years to produce a dictionary, learning 26 languages so that he could properly assess the origin of words. Okay, so we've scanned the text and we have located the topic sentence. Great, what do we do now? Okay, we read the complete keyword sentence, which is what we just did. Sorry. Okay, so moving on. Good. So in TOEFL, it's very important. You don't just choose the first option you think is right. You have to eliminate all the wrong answers before you are left with the right answer. That is the best way to do the TOEFL reading and answer these different types of questions. So let's eliminate the other three options before we choose the correct answer. Okay, so according to the passage, how did Noah Webster go about defining American English? We located that part of the text. Fantastic. Now let's eliminate some. So he worked every day for 22 years and made sure that everything was proper. This is not mentioned. They do say 22 years, but they did not mention anything about anything being proper or him making sure of anything. So that is not in there. It's not there. He worked on usage standards for 26 regions to adopt. Is there any mention of that? No. Okay, 26 regions? No, he said 26 languages, not 26 regions, so that's wrong. Okay, he worked for decades to invent new words and trace linguistic origins. There is nothing in here that talks about him inventing any words, so that is not possible. So through that process of elimination, we know that D should be the correct answer. So let's look at that. He studies other languages. Is that true? Okay. Learning 26 languages. Yes, so that's correct. Paraphrase, study, learning. Okay. And brought scientific terms into the American lexicon. So there is nothing about the American lexicon here. So let's quickly scan the text and see if we can find anything that resembles the American lexicon. And there you go. We scanned the text and we got here. He also added technological and scientific words. Okay, so he brought scientific terms into the American lexicon, adding technological and scientific words. Again, they're paraphrasing. Okay, so it is confirmed that D is the correct answer. So before you answer, you don't just answer the first question. Okay, you look at all the possibilities, you eliminate the three that you know are wrong, and then you answer the question. So distractors. Remember I told you that the TOEFL test creator is not going to make your life easy. They're going to make things attractive for you. Okay, so look at these three options we discarded. You see, according to the 22 years, there it is. So if you don't look properly, you can just see 22 years and wow, that must be the right answer. A, where it's not the right answer. Okay, so you can see the word proper is also in there. They are there to distract you. Be careful. You can see the number 26. 26. If you're doing it quickly, maybe you might choose 26. But then again, that would be the wrong answer. Okay, so and then you can also see in C, they have the word origins. And there it is, origin again of the words. So they're trying to make you choose A, B, or C by putting in exact match words from the text into your options. Now, very good. Whereas you look at the right answer, they paraphrased things. Okay, instead of saying, okay, learning 26 languages, they just said studies other languages. It's the same thing. It's paraphrasing. Okay, and instead of saying specifically added technological and scientific words, he brought scientific terms into American lexicon, paraphrasing. So that is the objective of the test maker, is to make things attractive for you by using exact match words, hoping that you will choose the wrong answer. That's not fair. It's not nice, is it? No, it isn't. But that's what you have to really be careful of, these distractors. So we're going to move on to question type number 2, and we will look at the best strategy to approach that question type. Great, here we go. Let's have a look at negative factual information questions. Here you're going to learn the best strategy to apply to answer the question correctly. Okay, so negative factual information questions. You are asked to verify details or a detail that is not true or not mentioned in the passage. It's very important to understand and see not. It's normally written in capital letters because you need to know that. They even in the test they write it in capital letters so that you can see it is negative. How can you recognize negative factual information questions? As I said, either with the word not in capital or except. If they appear in the question in capital letters, then you know you are dealing with a negative factual information question. So, example of this, and this is how they're used. According to the passage, which of the following is not true of X? Or, the author's description of X mentions all of the following except your options. So, basically, the strategy you need is that you need to read the question and identify the keywords in the answer choices. You have to compare the answer choices to the passage. You have 4 options. 3 of those 4 options are going to be reflected in the passage. 1 will not be reflected in the passage. It is your job to identify the one that is not reflected in the passage. Okay, so again, read the question and identify the keywords in the answer choices. Scan and locate the keywords in the passage. Read the keyword sentences and eliminate the true answers. Okay, so now let's do that together. Okay, so here we have our 4 different choices. We know that 3 of them are true. They are in this piece of text. 1 isn't in this piece of text. It is our job to identify which one isn't here. So we found the keywords. Remember that paraphrasing is important. They will probably do that. Okay, let's see if we can find 3 of them that are in this text. How do we find them quicker? By underlining the key ideas, the key words of every sentence. For example, which of the following is not a benefit of smart grid technology to consumers? So, A, it can reduce their electricity bills. So, electricity bill reduction or less. Think of synonyms, think of paraphrasing as you're underlining them. It can tell them how much energy each appliance is using. So, appliance usage consumption, think of it like that. It can allow them to turn appliances on and off when they're not at home. So remote controlling, basically, from far away. Okay. It can reduce the amount of energy needed to power appliances. So less consumption to power appliances. Okay, great. So we have our keywords. Now let's find them in the text. Okay, so move on. Here we go. We have found them. Smart grid technology offers benefits to the consumer too. They will be able to collect real-time information on their energy use for each appliance. So we have found that piece of information. Let's carry on. Okay, varying tariffs throughout the day will give customers the incentive to use appliances at times when supply greatly exceeds demand, leading to great reduction in bills. Do you remember anything about bills? Isn't that A? Might be, no? Okay, and allowing customers to switch appliances on or off remotely. That is also paraphrased in the keywords we chose. So let's look. Yes, here they are. Okay, remember this is a negative factual information question. Not 3 are true, 1 is false. We need to identify which one is false. We underlined the keywords, as you can see, which we did. Okay, and now we're going to see if they match. So if you look at it can reduce their electricity bills. Reduction, that's paraphrasing, reduction, electricity bills, there it is. It's right there. So that is true. Perfect. But we're not looking for the one that's true. We're looking for the one that's false. We have to choose the one that's false. It can tell them how much energy each appliance is using. They will be able to collect real-time information on their energy use or usage for each appliance. There you go. So it is there. It can allow them to turn appliances on or off when they're not at home. So when I chose the keyword, I automatically thought of remote. And there you go, remotely. Allowing customers to switch appliances on or off remotely. They say turn on or off, paraphrased, switched on or off. See how they like to use paraphrasing. And what we can't find in the text anywhere, okay, is that it can reduce the amount of energy needed to power appliances. So this option is not a benefit, because which of the following is a benefit? This is not a benefit of smart grid technology to consumers and is the option we need to choose. Okay, but okay, as you can see, they did use the word reduce, so they make it tempting. Okay, so but it's not there. Okay, so moving on. If you look at reduce, you might cross this one out because there you can see reduction. Okay, but this is a reduction in bills, not a reduction in the amount of energy needed to power appliances. So there you go. This is how you would apply this, how you would answer this negative factual information question. Okay, very good. Let's get ready for number 3. Okay, here we go. Welcome. Let's continue with the reading section. There are 10 different question types. We're now going to look at number 3 and the strategy you need to answer it correctly. Okay, vocabulary questions. Now, Identify the meanings of individual words and phrases as they are used in the reading passage. How can you recognize vocabulary questions? You will see one word or phrase highlighted in the passage. More examples of recognizing them. These are example questions. The word X in the passage is closest in meaning to, or in stating X, the author means that, etc. So very important. Please listen. A word might have more than one meaning. It is asking for the meaning of that word as it is used in the passage, in context, and not the dictionary definition. Okay? Please remember, it is the word as it is used in context. That is what you need to answer, not the direct meaning. So, general strategy is that you read the sentence that contains the word and look for contextual clues. Okay, so this is a localized kind of question. Okay, so you will see the word highlighted or the phrase highlighted in the text. They will help you identify it quickly. You don't have to scan, it's right there, you will see it. Now, try each option before you choose the one you believe to be true. Again, you don't just choose, oh, that's easy, I'll choose B. No, you look at A, C, and D before you choose B. Because be careful, remember, the test maker's job is to make things attractive for you. If you don't take your time, then amount of time you need, they will get you. Be careful. So note that a word might have more than one meaning. It is asking for the meaning as it used in the passage again, and not the direct dictionary definition. So I've got a great tip for you. Listen. Now, identify the wrong answers. Well, that's easier said than done. But sometimes they make it really easy. If two answers, so you have four answer choices. If two answer choices have the same meaning, like synonyms, they are obviously both wrong, because you can't have two correct answers for a vocabulary question. You can't. Okay? So now, that is how you can identify the wrong answer. If you see two words that are synonyms. Now, identify the correct answer. The correct answer choice can replace the word or phrase without changing the meaning of the sentence or contradicting the main idea of the passage. Easier said than done, but let's have a look. Now, this is an example question. I want you to try to do it. So you will see the highlighted part in the text, as you can see here. This is a vocabulary type question. Okay? Now, the word temperate in the passage is closest in meaning to wet, varying, humid, moderate. Okay, so there you take a few seconds. I'll give you 10 seconds and you try to answer that. Okay, so which one do you think it is? Okay, so let's look. Answer. The word temperate in the passage is closest in meaning to moderate. If you remember the tip I gave you, you would automatically dismiss A and C, leaving you with a 50-50% chance. Why? Because wet is a synonym of humid. Humid is a synonym of wet. That is why you can automatically forget about A and C, because both of them, either of them can't be right. You can't have two correct answers. Now, moderate is the correct answer, because it can replace the word in the passage without contradicting the main idea. Varying, possible, but changes the meaning. Focus should be on the lack of extremes, not the range of temperatures. Okay. So if you read the sentence before and after, you would see that focus should be on the lack of extremes and not the range of temperatures. All right. So Now, that was a good tip. Please remember, okay, to identify the wrong answers. Like this, you can focus on the possible ones. Let's carry on. Here is another question. The word proximity in the passage is closest in meaning to dependence, introduction, significance, closeness. Take 10 seconds and try to answer it. Okay, let's see if you answered it correctly. All right, so in this vocabulary question, it's very localized. You're not going to have to read anything here in order to understand what this is. Okay, so it's more localized, so your answer in context will be closest to the highlighted word or phrase. You're just going to focus on that little area there. Don't waste your time reading this because it's not going to help you understand the context of that. It's a localized question. Okay, so answer. Now, the context refers to distance. That's an observation I have. Okay, the islands enjoy mild temperatures largely because of their distance to the ocean. So if I could use a synonym, what I do normally, or what I teach my students, is that if they can think of synonyms to the highlighted word, think of synonyms because of their distance to the ocean. That makes sense in my mind. Okay, so let's look at the possible answers. Dependence. Dependence has no effect on temperature. Okay, it has no effect on temperature at all. Now, introduction. Okay, well, let's see. The islands enjoy mild temperature largely because of their independence to the ocean. That's confusing. It's just confusing in my mind. Okay, significance. The islands enjoy mild temperatures largely because of their significance to the ocean. No, that again, it's a little bit confusing. So our synonym was distance. Let's look at D, closeness. Close and near are synonyms. Okay, so close and near are synonyms. The word fits into the context of distance. So D would be the correct answer. Okay, so and that is how you would approach this specific TOEFL reading question type, the vocabulary question. Please look at all 4 options. Make sure the other 3 are wrong before you choose the correct one. Think of synonyms. When you get a vocabulary question, think of synonyms because that synonym might possibly be exactly the one you need in your 4 options, okay? Or it might be one that tells you more about the context. Like we said here, proximity is distance. Distance fits into closeness. Near, far, that's about distance. Okay, so we're going to move on to the reading question type number 4. That's in the next video. More strategies coming your way. Let's go. Okay, let's have a look at the strategy you need to answer question type 4 of the reading section, the TOEFL. It is called the inference question. Okay, it's a type of question you need to know the strategy for. So inference questions. You are asked to choose one of the options that is strongly implied but not explicitly stated in the reading passage. Now, this is the second most popular question in the reading section, so it's very important for you to understand how to approach this type of question. But before you can approach it, you need to identify the question. So how can you identify or recognize inference questions? Inference questions will usually include the word infer, suggest, or imply. Examples of this and how they normally ask the questions are as follows. Which of the following can be inferred about X? Well, the author of the passage implies that X, And which of the following can be inferred from the paragraph 1 about X? So very important then that you're going to have to make a logical conclusion based on the text. You're not going to have any connection. Oh, that's the answer right there, because you need to imagine what the most likely result is or would be based on the information. So we're going to look at an example here. It is not explicitly stated in the text, okay, but there is information that might help you understand that, okay, well, if they are like that, then maybe it's possible they'll be like that. So let's look at an option here. Here, I'm going to help you to understand what an inference is. So now, listen to this. With clippers in one hand and scissors in the other, Hassan was ready to begin his job. Okay, so what are the facts? What are the details? Okay, so the details of that sentence is does he have a job? Yes, he has a job, because it's clearly stated in the text. He has a job. Is he a man or a woman? Hassan is a man. It is clearly stated in the text. Okay, so he was ready to begin his job. So we know he's a man and we know he has a job. Now, the inference, what we don't know from the text, but we can logically conclude and imagine. If I ask you, based on that text, what kind of job? So with clippers in one hand and scissors in another hand, Hassan was ready to begin his job. What kind of job do you think he has? Maybe he's a barber or a hairdresser. Okay, so now that is what we can imagine, because he has clippers and scissors. So he's a barber or a hairdresser. Is he at work? Well, Hassan was ready to begin his job. We can assume yes, he is at work. Okay, so because he's ready to begin his job. But does it say in the text he's at work? No, it doesn't. But you can infer that he's at work. Does it say that he's a barber or a hairdresser? No, but again, you can infer. Okay, so that is the difference between a detailed question where you have specific facts and details and an inference. We are looking at inference questions now. Based on the information we get, we need to make a logical conclusion. And we have information here to help us come to that logical conclusion. Okay, so now inference questions identify key words in the question. Okay, so again, how do we identify what type of question? Here it says imply. Okay, so imply, suggest, or infer. If you see those three, you know it's an inference question, and you know you have to think of what the logical conclusion is, and not something that is explicitly stated in the text. Okay, so now what does the author imply about the musical improvisation of black slaves? Okay, so first to identify the key words in the question: musical improvisation, black slaves. So now then we will scan the text and locate the keywords that we underline. Okay, so we're scanning, and it's for black Africans, scanning, because we have black. Okay, we're brought into New World slaves, black slaves, keyword, improvised music, improvisation, keyword. Great, so this is where we need to focus on. Our keywords are here. We identified them in the passage by underlining the keywords in the question. Great, what now? Let's look. Okay, so here we have that piece of text. Okay, I've typed out this piece of text because that's the only area we need to focus on. Great, let's go. So now let's make a logical conclusion based on the text. Okay, so let me read it. It is probable that black Africans who were brought to the New World to work as slaves on plantations carried with them an ability to improvise in music. In other words, to spontaneously vary individual parts in a musical performance. Great. So let's look at the options. Okay, what does the author imply, suggest, mean about the musical improvisation of black slaves? A. It was no longer needed in America. Is there anything here that talks about the need of it? Anything that implies need? I'm not seeing anything. There's nothing here that implies the need for something. Okay, the necessity for something. B. It started on slave plantations. So slave plantations, wow, that's very attractive, isn't it? And that is why, whoa, I'm cautious, because it's too easy. It's too easy. Okay, exact match keyword, be careful, it's a trap. Okay, so because there is nothing, if you just see slave plantations and you don't look at the word start, they don't say anything about anything starting. There's nothing, no start or finish, anything about that mentioned. So that would be very attractive because of slave plantations, but it would be the wrong answer. It developed quickly in America. So America implied, I would say America is implied because it's like the new world. Fine, I can see that. But no development nor speed implied. Because, again, it doesn't talk about anything being developed. And even if it is talking about anything developed, I'm not seeing anything about how fast or how quickly anything is being developed. There are no adverbs that imply fastness, quickness, etc., etc. So let's look at D. It had its origins in Africa. Okay, so is that possible? Okay, so Africa's here. It is probable that black Africans who were brought to the New World, so I assume that's America, to work as slaves on plantations carried with them, so they brought with them, they took with them, the ability to improvise in music. So it was brought with them from Africa. Was it brought with them from Africa? Yes, it was brought with them from Africa. Okay, it was in Africa, and they took it from Africa with them. So it started in Africa, and they took it with them. That's where it started. So it had its origins in Africa. So we can infer, okay, that it originated in Africa, because it is probable that black Africans who were brought to the New World, blah, 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 carried with them the ability to improvise in music. So where did that come from? It came from them. Where did they come from? They came from Africa. That is how you can logically conclude what that answer would be. Okay, so again, be careful. Do you see how attractive B was? Slave plantations, slaves on plantations. Yeah, be careful. They make it attractive. Okay, so in inference, when you see text for text copy, which is almost this, it's too easy. Why? You have to ask yourself why. Okay, so that is the strategy you need in order to get this type of answer correct. Okay, come to a logical conclusion. Please remember to dismiss all the other three options before you choose your correct option. Okay, inference question, ask yourself question. It was no longer needed in Africa. Is there anything said about need here or necessity? Not that it's even stated here. Is there anything that implies the need of anything? If your answer is no, then you can move on. Okay, so very good. We're going to look at question number 5 in the next video with more tips and strategies. See you there. Hello, friends and family. I've got fantastic news for you. This rhetorical purpose question. it is basically the same as the inference question. So that means that is one less strategy that you have to learn. It is one strategy that you've already learned that you can apply to two different types of questions. But let's look at it a little bit anyway. Rhetorical purpose questions. You are asked why the author has presented a particular piece of information in a particular place or manner. So how do you recognize rhetorical purpose questions? So this is how rhetorical purpose questions are typically worded in the exam. Now, the author discusses X in paragraph 2 in order to, why does the author mention X? The author uses X as an example of, again, you will need to come to a conclusion because you're not going to find word for word or the information you need explicitly stated in the text. Rhetorical purpose questions are similar to inference questions because they also ask for information that is not plainly stated in the text. You have to come to a logical conclusion, which is the strategy we looked at in the fourth question type, the inference question. So these will ask why the author has presented a particular piece of information. So please apply the exact same strategy for both the inference question and the rhetorical purpose question. Fantastic news. You don't have to learn anything more, but we're going to go into number 6 where you do need a different strategy, and that I'm going to help you with now. So get ready. Here we go. Okay. Are you ready to learn the strategies you need for the 6th question type of the TOEFL reading? This is called the reference question type. So the reference question. You're asked to identify the referential relationship between a pronoun and its antecedent. Okay, so what does that mean? Okay, it's, for example, if they say that means or this, okay, or they or these. Now this, they, that, they're referring to something previously mentioned. Okay, and it is our job to find out what that is. So recognizing a reference question. Reference questions look similar to vocabulary questions. Usually a pronoun would be highlighted in the passage. So you'll see the passage and there will be a pronoun that is highlighted. Now, the 4 answer choices will be words or phrases from the passage, but only one choice is the word to which the highlighted pronoun refers to. Let me give an example. Now, the great white shark is the most beautiful shark in the world. It is known to swim in the North Atlantic. It is known. What is it? It is referring to something. It is referring to the great white shark. So this is the overall idea of what you are expected to do in this kind of question. How can you identify and recognize this question? The following way. The word X in the passage refers to something that was previously mentioned. Or the words, it might be 2 words, it might be a mini composition of words as well. Okay, so let's look. Tips on how to identify wrong answers. They will not grammatically fit. If they say it is singular, for example, okay, and great white sharks, for example, that's plural. So plural and singular, that would not fit in that number, or it could be gender, or it could be case as well. Now, it would also change the meaning of the sentence, so you have to be careful of that as well. Now, the noun is normally identified before the pronoun. So in English grammar, when you want to use a pronoun, you need to identify the noun first. So that is normally how it is located. Now we're going to look at an example. Example of a reference question. The phrase, these amateurs, in the passage refers to one of 4 options. So here it is highlighted in the passage, as it will be in the test on the computer when you do it. These amateurs refer to a pronoun a noun that was previously mentioned in the text. Okay, so now let's look at the strategy on how to identify which noun these amateurs refer to a noun, which one it is, because from here to here there will be a lot of nouns. So now, but only one will be the correct answer. So try to identify the traps and cross out the wrong answers before choosing your final answer. This is general common sense in TOEFL test taking. You don't just choose the first one you see and you believe to be right. You look and you dismiss the wrong answers first. You look at all four and you take the one you're left with and you confirm that. Now, the phrase these amateurs in the passage refers to. Now let's look. We've got town band members. There it is. It's in the passage, town band. Okay. Poorer musicians. There it is, poorer people. Okay. But it's being paraphrased. Militia band members. You've got militia band. Very attractive, isn't it? Militia bands. Then you've got pawn shop. You've got pawn shop too. So all of them are nouns and all of them are before the pronoun. So which one can it be? Let's look. Okay. Remember, the pronoun these amateurs refers to a noun previously mentioned. All the four choices you have are nouns previously mentioned in a passage, but which one refers to these amateurs? Now, normally the closest noun before the pronoun these amateurs is the correct choice. So you've got four options. Normally the closest one before the noun is the correct answer. Okay, so now if we read, let's verify that. Okay, so this enabled poorer people to obtain instruments cheaply. The demand for live music was so great that many of these amateurs are referring to these poor people. Okay, and that is the easiest way to answer this type of question. As you can see here, they say poorer musicians, which is being paraphrased by saying poorer people, but people who obtain instruments. So a person who obtains an instrument, you can infer that that is a musician, and that is the most logical option here. Because if you look at militia bands, that is way back, that's far too back in order for these amateurs to refer to militia bands. Why? Because you've got other nouns in the middle. Okay, so that is why the closest noun to the pronoun, to the reference question that is highlighted, is the correct answer. Okay, so now that is how you can infer that poorer people who obtain instruments are musicians. It is paraphrased here, and this is the best strategy to answer this question correctly. Please remember to dismiss the other options, okay, because these amateurs are not referring to town bands. Why not? Because you've got more nouns after that, in between that one and these amateurs. It's the one previous, the one that is before it, but the closest before it, that is the correct answer. Okay, so that was a great strategy. Please use this strategy whenever you see this reference question. We're going to move on to the next question type for the TOEFL. I hope you're ready, because I am. Here we go. Okay, friends and family, it's Jan here. We're going to look at the question type number 7, which is the sentence simplification question. Okay, now the sentence simplification question. You are asked to choose a sentence that has the same essential meaning as a sentence in the passage. So if you look at this image right here, the sentence in the passage is highlighted. And what you have to do is to choose which sentence would be able to replace that sentence without altering the meaning or losing any essential information. You have 4 options, but there is only one option that contains all the essential information, nothing more and nothing less than as in the highlighted paragraph you can see here, the highlighted phrase. So how can you recognize this type of question? The sentence simplification question. Now, this type of question always looks the same. A single sentence in the passage is highlighted. Okay, and the question is, you can identify it like this too. Which of the following best expresses the essential information in the highlighted sentence? It's always the same question. Okay, so basically what we have to do is we have to look at all four of them. We have to understand and come to the conclusion that 3 are wrong and that 1 is correct. 3 of them have either more information or not enough information, but only 1 has the exact same amount of essential information. Which one is it? Because that is our correct answer, our correct choice. Let's look at a strategy, the best strategy in order for you to answer this type of question. Okay, first of all, okay, here you have your question, and that is the highlighted passage, piece of passage you will find in the passage. Okay, so I'm going to read it to you. But until it hardens, the new coat is tender and easily penetrated. Accordingly, the arthropod must remain in hiding. Otherwise, it risks being snapped up by a predator clever enough to take advantage of its lowered defenses. That is the passage. Which one of these 4 options is the closest in meaning, has all the essential information, nothing more and nothing less? Okay, so strategy. What we have to do is we have to first of all look at the highlighted sentence and identify the essential information. We don't need any modifiers, we don't need any additional information. We just want the most important information, because that is what one of the 4 options will have. We need to match this essential information with the essential information in one of our 4 options. So now, but until it hardens, that is not really important. Until what hardens? We don't even know what it is, so it's irrelevant. Okay, so now, now it says the new coat. The new coat is tender and easily penetrated. Accordingly, we can cross out. We can also cross out that if you want. Okay, the most important information is highlighted in yellow. The arthropod must remain in hiding. That is important information. It must remain in hiding. Okay, otherwise we cross it out. It risks being snapped up by a predator, so a predator is being mentioned. Okay, so here we have the essential information. The new coat is tender and easily penetrated. The arthropod must remain in hiding. It risks being snapped up by a predator. So that is essential. We need to find the choice in here that matches all 3 of these points here. So let's go through them one by one, A, B, C, and D. And let's see if we can find the perfect match. Remember, nothing more and nothing less. Essential. It has to match the essential information. Great. Let's look at A. Okay, so here we have our little checklist, the essential information. Okay, arthropods are vulnerable to predators only during the period in which their shell is tender and easily penetrated. So obviously you're seeing the same words and the same ideas being paraphrased, so all of them look attractive, but only one has the essential information. Okay, so we can see that arthropods are being mentioned. Great. Predator is being mentioned too. Great. But vulnerable only during the period, there is nothing about that here. That is additional information. So already based on that, this is not the correct answer. And another reason this is not the correct answer, we don't have anything about it hiding mentioned in this option. So there are 2 reasons this is not the correct option. It lacks essential information and it adds additional information. A is not a possibility. Okay, so we can cross out A. Let's go and look at B. Okay, predators typically prefer to eat arthropods that are waiting for their new coats to harden. So the subject of the sentence is predators, and it should be arthropods. So just based on that, this option is not possible. Okay, the subject should be arthropods and not predators. So we can dismiss B completely. Now, we're going to look at C. We're going to verify and see how C would do. Okay, so let's look at this. We've got matching. So while the arthropod shell is hardening, so the weakened shell is mentioned and it matches the first sentence. The new coat is tender and easily penetrated, so it matches. Okay, so the arthropod cannot rely on its shell to protect it, cannot rely on its shell. So this is paraphrasing it hiding. Okay, so it must remain in hiding because it cannot rely on its shell. So that is a match. Okay, and then the predator is mentioned too. At risk of being snapped by a predator to protect it from predators. It's the same thing, it's just paraphrased. So option C, this is a fantastic option. Everything is mentioned, all the essential information is mentioned, nothing more, nothing less. This until now is the best option. But remember, we have to look at all the options. So we will keep C open. That is a possibility. Let's look at D. Okay, so when the arthropod defenses are lowered, it will use many different strategies to avoid predators. Many different strategies is information which is beyond the text. There's nothing about strategies in here, so we can deduct this one from our possibilities. It is not possible because it's adding information. Okay, so basically, with that being said, because of our checklist, because we identified the essential information, we can clearly see that the correct answer would be this, because this in here, you have all the essential information, nothing more and nothing less. In the other options, you have more information, okay? You don't have enough information, okay? Or the subject of the sentence is the wrong one as well. So that is how you would apply this strategy. Remember that you have to look at all 4 options. You've already made the checklist. It's not going to take you that long to just verify that D is not the correct option. Even though you get to see, oh yeah, that's it, that's definitely it. Hey, verify that it's not D because you might be surprised. Okay, so great, that is the approach you need. Fantastic. We're going to look at more strategies in number 8. Okay, see you there. Great, are you ready to learn exactly what strategies you need to be successful in the insert text question type of the TOEFL reading? Well, let me help you understand exactly how to answer this question and what strategies you need to be successful. So, the insert text question. You are given a new sentence and asked where in the passage it would best fit. If you look to your right, you will be able to see that is the sentence in bold. And what you have to do is take that sentence and put it into one of the 4 black squares where it best fits. So, recognizing this type of question, you will see 4 black squares in the passage, as you can do right now, and you will be asked to indicate where the sentence marked in bold in the question area could be added to the passage. Okay, make sure that the inserted sentence connects logically to both the sentence before and after it. It's very important, because if not, it would not be logical. That is the point, to see if you can understand the flow of the context. That is the point right here. So let's look. Now, pay attention to the transition words. That is the tip right there. Select an option by clicking on the square in the reading text. So when you are doing this, you can click, 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 click. You can click the sentence as many times as you wish, and you will see the sentence appear there. You don't have to only click once. Don't be worried. Click as many times as you want here to see if that sentence best matches that specific space. Okay, so try it in all of them. As always, you have to discard all the other options before you come to the correct option. So let's look at more strategies. Now, good. So here I have typed out this piece of question, and you would click here, and then this sentence would appear there, and then you can read it. Okay, you can click here, you can click as many times as you want. Okay, just try that sentence in all different areas. Okay, so now identify the key words in the sentence, and it's very important to identify words such as I highlighted it here. This information is referring to information in a previous sentence. So if let's say, for example, I click here, then this sentence would appear here. And then this information would refer to information that is here. If I put it here, it would refer to information that is here before the previous black dot. Okay, so the keywords here are this information led to malaria prevention efforts that involve destroying or avoiding the mosquitoes that carried it. Because I'm scanning the text here at the beginning and I'm not seeing anything related to the mosquitoes. The mosquitoes going to help us identify better where we have to locate or add this type of information. It's an important keyword. So we need to look for something that before talks about mosquitoes and before has relevant information about that. Okay, so now this information, what information? Information that talks about mosquitoes. Okay, so scan the text for mosquitoes and see if there is information in the sentence that would allow our sentence to be placed afterwards. Our sentence has to go after the information and after mosquitoes, because this information is referring to something previously mentioned. So let's look. Okay, so what we've done is we've scanned the text, we've scanned it, and we found that you can find mosquitoes here. Okay, and let's look, because mosquitoes is not mentioned anywhere else. You don't have to read the passage, it's not there, trust me. Okay, so if I were to put it in here, okay, it would not make any sense, because in here they're not speaking about mosquitoes, and mosquitoes was the key word that we underlined. If I had to put it in here, it would be exactly the same. Okay, so in A, no specific information mentioned, nothing important mentioned, or anything about mosquitoes. Okay, the same would apply for B, no specific information mentioned or anything about mosquito. And if you want to, you can read that part there, and it talks about the main topic is about parasites and not mosquitoes. So, okay, they're talking about parasites. And then C, it's the same thing, no specific information mentioned or anything about mosquitoes. But if we look at D, for example, okay, after C, in 1897, a British doctor stationed in India discovered the malaria parasites were passed from one person to another person by mosquitoes. Okay, so and then we would click here, and then our sentence would appear here. So the discovery, that is the information, this information led to malaria prevention efforts that involved destroying or avoiding the mosquitoes that carried it. Okay, the mosquitoes that carried it discovered that malaria parasites were passed from one person to another. They carried it from one person. So this is the most logical place to put our sentence, because in the sentence beforehand, it talks about discovery, it talks about the information, it talks about the mosquito carrying the malaria from one person to another. So that is why our option would be, we would click on the black circle in D. We would click on D, and when we click on D, our sentence would appear here, and that would be the correct answer. Okay, so the most important thing you can do here is to identify this information, okay, the keywords that will help you understand what before was mentioned, or it could be afterwards too, because if you have a sentence here, it might mention something at the end here that will help you understand, oh, that's talking about what is coming in the next sentence. Okay, so this is the approach and the strategy you need to apply to get this answer right, to answer it correctly. Okay, so now you please remember to verify that the other three options are wrong before you choose the correct answer. Okay, thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next video tutorial. Wait for you there. Okay, friends and family, we're getting there. You're learning all the strategies, and now we're going to learn an extremely important strategy for question type 9 of the reading in the TOEFL exam. Okay, so a lot of students are afraid of question type 9, the prose summary question, because it is worth more points. Okay, it could be worth 2 points easily. Okay, it is normally worth more points, and it's always, basically not normally, it's always worth more points. So I'm going to give you a strategy that is going to help you answer this question easily, because it is intimidating to students. But if you know the right strategy, it'll be easy. You'll see right now. Let me teach you. So, prose summary question. These questions measure your ability to understand and recognize the major ideas and the relative importance of information in a passage. You will be asked to select the major ideas in a passage by distinguishing them from minor ideas that are not in the passage. Now, the correct answer choice will synthesize major ideas in the passage. It's an important thing to remember, main points and not minor details. And you'll see why later on. Recognizing the prose summary question is you will be given 6 answer choices and asked to pick 3 that express the most important ideas in the passage. Note, worth 1 or 2 points depending on how many correct answers you choose. So you've got a fantastic opportunity to get full marks here. Now, let's look. The strategy you need. Okay, you need to scan the passage and look for the topic sentences for each paragraph in the passage. Remember, scan topic sentences. Read and compare the 6 options you have with the topic sentences from the passage. I'll show you how to do that now. Avoid choosing detailed options, as you're asked to choose which best summarize the passage. You're not asked for details, you're asked for the best summary. Now, topic sentences. We looked at this previously at the beginning of this course, but I'm going to remind you. So topic sentences, first paragraph, the topic sentence appears at the end of the first paragraph of the passage, at the end of the introduction. Okay, that is a topic sentence. And all the other paragraphs after that, the rest of the remaining topic sentences appear at the beginning of all the other paragraphs of the passage that follow the introduction. So this is what you're going to get. Ta-da! That's a lot. Imagine having to read all of that and then compare all that information with 6 possibilities and then choose the 3 best ones. You don't have enough time to do that. So what we have to do is we have to identify the most important parts. And the strategy you need is to understand where the most important parts are. Why? Like this, you don't have to read everything. You only read what you need to read. And it's always the same. So let's identify the most important parts. The topic sentences. Here we go. So as you can see, you have the introduction here. The most important sentence is at the end of that introduction. It's always like that. Okay, this is how North American universities work. This is how they write their essays. This is the structure they always use. And this allows us not to have to read everything else. So you don't have to read quickly through everything. Only read the topic sentences. Write the topic sentences down, okay, or get them basically. Now, remember, the first topic sentence is at the end of the introduction. After that, all the other topic sentences will be at the beginning of all the paragraphs. At the beginning, at the beginning, at the beginning. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 6 of them. Great. We need those 6. So let's move on. We've written those 6 down, and here we go. Here are the 6 topic sentences from the passage. These 6 you see here are these 6 that we noticed here. Okay. And then TOEFL, okay, gives us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 options. Okay. And what we have to do is to choose 3 options that best summarize the passage. So we already have all the most important information from the passage. What we have to do now is connect these ideas with those ideas. 3 of them won't connect. Okay, the other 3 will be the correct answers. So let's look and see how to find those connections. So basically what you will do, you will compare your topic sentences with the answer choices that TOEFL gives you. I repeat, 3 will be correct and 3 will be incorrect. Okay, so let's look. Okay, so let's look at choice 1. Okay, A. This information does not match any of the main ideas in the topic sentence. So I looked at this information. Scholars from Antioch, Alexandria, and other Middle Eastern culture centers. There's nothing about that in here. So we don't, that, just no. Okay, dismissed. Okay, so we can dismiss that one. Great. We've dismissed 1. We have to identify 3 more and dismiss 2 more. Okay, so if we look at B, the expansion of Alexander's empire led to the diffusion of Greek language. Came to Greece to study the Greek language and culture, literature, and thought throughout the Middle East. Okay, so if we look at that, now we have this, we have to compare this with one of our main topics. And if you do that, you will see, okay, that the first of these was the expansion of Greek civilization, Greek language and culture and literature, that is paraphrasing civilization. Okay, and throughout the Middle East. Great, there you go. B, we can connect. So this is important information. It is in the text, it's in the passages, it's in the topic sentences. So that is a great option. That for now is correct. It is important information. Now, let's move on to C. Let's compare. So we can forget about 2, okay, and we can forget about B. That is probably a right answer. So looking at C, we're going to compare C with our topic sentences. Increasing urbanization and the elimination of trade barriers meant the end of Greek city-state and the creation of a much larger political and economic body. Okay, so this matches the topic information in 3. It matches it. They're the same thing. Okay, so we can see that C matches 3. Now let's go to number D. If you look at D, I'm not going to read it, but D matches number 5. This here matches number 5. Okay, so it uses paraphrasing like religious philosophy and religion of the East. Okay, ideas with the religious spirit of Asia, the East and Asia. They're using paraphrasing, but it's the same thing. And now, so basically we have 1, 2, and 3. Those are our 3 options basically. But we can verify that the bottom 2 are incorrect as well. Okay, because if you read in more detail, not the passage, but your topic sentences, okay, you would see that E, this contradicts the main idea of paragraph 4, that ancient Greek citizens were not specialists, etc., etc. And F, this is a minor detail and can be eliminated. So F, we don't want details, we want summaries. Okay, so that leaves us with these 3 options that we got from our topic sentences. So B, C, and D would get you full points. You would get maximum points for this if you apply the strategy. What most students do is they start reading everything. No, you don't have to. As you just saw, identify the location of the topic sentences, write them down. You have a list. Compare your list to your choices, and there you go. They will use paraphrasing, as we said. Okay, religion of the East, religious spirit of Asia. It's the same thing. Okay, so understand that they will paraphrase. This is your checklist. You compare it, and you will get all the points you need for this part. Okay, so great. I hope you enjoyed that. I enjoyed teaching you that. Let's move on to the last one. See you in the next video. Hello, we're back. So let's look at the final question type of the TOEFL reading section. This is the fill in the table question type. So yeah, you don't get this type of question very often, but if you do get it, it's worth a lot of points. A lot. Okay, 3 points to be exact. Okay, so a fill in the table question. So you will be given a partially completed table based on information in the passage. So you have to complete the table by clicking on the correct answer choice and dragging them to the correct location. You've got 2 options. In this example here, you've got, for example, constructive processes, and the other would be destructive processes. So that could be a table where you would just drag the correct option to its correct place. Okay, so the correct answer choice will synthesize major ideas in the passage. Okay, so again, you've learned a lot until now. You know where the major points are in the passage. You know how to quickly locate and identify them. So with this fill in the table question, okay, there are some teachers who say, read through everything, summarize every passage, and then compare your summary with every option. Yeah, okay. So we're gonna talk about that because I don't know about that. I do know. I've got my own strategy for that. So time is very important. If you look at the amount of text that you have to read, so you have to read every paragraph and write down a summary of every paragraph, and that summary is going to be your opinion of that paragraph. So it might not even be the right summary for that paragraph. Maybe you summarize something you shouldn't have summarized. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you a logical strategy based on logic that will help you save time. Okay, so you've got 2 options. You can listen to other teachers, and hey, they're not wrong. It's just which is more or less time consuming. Option 1, read everything and summarize everything. So that takes time. Or you can look at me now and I'll give you my option. You choose which one you want, but I find, and my students find, that this option is the best one. So let's look at it, yeah? So there are 3 elements that make up this type of fill in the table question. The table is divided into 2 categories. You have 2 categories. Okay, so you've got element 1, you've got options to choose from. You normally have 6 options. Element 2, you've got a table divided into 2 categories. And element 3, you've got a long passage. I mean, it's long. Believe me, it's long. You will see it now. Alrighty then. So the 6 options, I say 6 because you might get 1 more or 1 less. Okay, so they're normally 6. Okay, so your step 1 is you're going to start with your 6 options. You're going to look at your 6 options. If we go back, sorry. Okay, these are your 6 options. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In this case, there are 7, as you can see. But you're going to look at these 7 options. Okay, now, and in our case, we have 6 options. Okay, so it doesn't matter 6 or 7 or 5. You're going to look at your options, and you're going to underline the key words, because you're going to have to scan the text. You're not going to read it. You're going to scan the text okay, to find this information. Okay, so I underline the options here. The keywords would be tar and benzene. It's difficult to paraphrase tar and benzene. Okay, these options I'm choosing can't really be paraphrased. They can't. It's just the names of things. Okay, Pleistocene epoch ended. So that's an important keyword. Scandinavia. You can't paraphrase Scandinavia. Well, maybe you could, but it's going to be in the text as Scandinavia. 7 tests. That's very important. That's an important number. I mean, numbers and easy to locate. Glaciations as well. So you highlight the keyword. It's very important to highlight them. Okay. Now, moving on. Element 2, the table. So the table is divided into 2 columns, meaning there are 2 categories. Okay. And your options need to go into those 2 categories. Okay. So sometimes you have options that don't go into any categories. Doesn't mean you have to put all of them in. Only the information that is relevant. Okay. You need to keep this in mind once you have located your keywords in the reading passage. Because great, now you have your keyword, and you've located that area, but does that area belong to category 1 or category 2? Okay, so remember that. You've got your keywords from your choices, and now you have to understand that there are 2 categories that those keywords can fall into. Okay, so let's look at that. Let's carry on. Everything is very logical, as you can see from now on. So you remember the 2 categories and you understand the keywords, which is basically everything. Okay, but they're easy to identify because they're very unique. Okay, so now there you go. There you have the text. That's a long piece of text. So you normally, okay, I'm going to tell you what I think the best way is to do this. Okay, so this is the text. As you already know, the topic sentences are normally, okay, at the introduction it's at the end, okay, and then the other ones is at the beginning of each paragraph. Okay, so you know that, so that's good to know. If you want to quickly read the topic sentences, that's fantastic. That's a good idea, and it doesn't take you long at all. Okay, so moving on, because reading the topic sentences can help you understand maybe which categories these paragraphs belong to. Okay, moving on. Okay, so we have our keywords that we took from our 6 different options, tar and benzene, etc., 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 etc. So what I'm going to do is, what I recommend doing is scanning the text. But before we do that, remember that we have 2 categories. So you quickly scan the text and you see that tar and benzene. You can only find tar and benzene here. It's nowhere else to be found. Okay, and if you scan for category, you will see that tar, benzene, and tar, which category do they fall into? Have a look. California, Cuba, faunal analysis. So we know that tar and benzene, A keyword, falls into the faunal analysis in Cuba category. We know that. So here is your answer. There it is. Okay, and all of the other information would be completely irrelevant. Even though at the bottom you can see number 3, they speak about faunal analysis. They do not mention tar or benzene at all, but where they do mention it is here. So we know that tar and benzene, option A, goes into the blue category, which is faunal. So there you go. A goes into that one, and that's done. Now let's move on. Okay, so these are my keywords. Let's move on. I've got my keywords here. So let's scan for that word. So see, the first time it comes up is here. Okay, and we carry on scanning, and we see it comes up a lot of times here. And it also comes up with a category as well of 2 Greek fossil forests. And look at where the categories are. Please look. They're at the beginning. They're in the topic sentences. That's what's important for you to know, that the most important information, the categories, are in the topic sentences. Okay, so up until now, we've not had to use any of this information. So we've saved all that time reading that and summarizing that. We spent our time identifying the keywords, scanning the text. Great. Here we go. Now, this is the keyword. It's found repetitively here. It is found with the category tag as well. So this has to be, it has to be here. Radiocarbon dating into Greek fossil forests. So, great, done. Next one, C. Let's carry on. Okay, we've got Scandinavia. Let's scan the text. Where are you at, Scandinavia? There you go. Scandinavia is there. We scanned the text and we found Scandinavia. Where is Scandinavia? It is in the, we already know this is the category of it. So Scandinavia goes into radiocarbon. There you go. Scandinavia is nowhere else. It's in this category. There you go. C. Now let's go on to D. See, it's not that difficult. So go on to D. Okay, D, 70 tests. That's a very specific number. And then we carry on. Oh, 70, the number 70 only appears once, and it appears here. So the answer has to be here. But wait, is it the correct answer? Because here, look at it, we've got 70 tests is the keyword, but I found 70 labs. So be careful. Let's be careful here. Let's take a moment and let's think. Remember, we've saved a lot of time. Okay, so let's use that time wisely. Okay, so look. Samples from the fossil forest were used in tests in over 70 labs, dating the trees back to etc., etc., etc. So 70 tests and not in 70 labs. So the number 70 coincides, but it's not the right answer, okay? Because the choice is 70 tests, and in the passage they're talking about 70 labs. There's no correlation. So what do? Okay, the choice D doesn't belong to anyone. We don't put D anywhere. Forget about D. It's nothing. It's wrong. Move on to E, and you move on to F. If you follow this strategy, you will get maximum points for your TOEFL without having to read everything and waste time. This is pure logic. Keyword, location, topic sentences with the main ideas. Okay, you see where they fit, and there you go. That would be the end of it. And as you can see, look at these two passages here. Look at this whole half. We didn't use, there was nothing relevant there. Okay, so up until now at least, because we still have two more. Okay, but nevertheless, we've saved a lot of time, and this is a strategy that you should apply. And as you can see, 13, 70, 30, I believe it's somewhere here. The answer is going to be there too. And glaciations, well, you can try to find that one if you wish. But these are the two main category areas, and you're going to find all your information here. Okay, so well done. That is the end of all the reading questions. You now know all the strategies that you need to get the best possible score in the TOEFL reading. You can even teach it now if you want to. All right, so well done. Congratulations. We're going to move on to the listening part now. Okay, so I'll see you there with more tips and strategies. Okay, here we are. We are ready to take on the listening part of the TOEFL test. So a quick recap, a quick review. Okay, the listening section, you can get 30 marks for it. Okay, you can get 3 lectures, or possibly an additional 4th, which would be an experimental one. Or you could get, and you will get either 2 or 3 conversational based listening tasks. Normally it's 2, but you could get a 3rd one, which would be conversational, which would be experimental. I apologize. Okay, so and you will be given extra time for the experimental tasks, but they will not be scored, and you don't know which one it is, or they could possibly be. Okay, note taking is essential. You'll have, if you get 5 tasks in total, 3 and 2, 5, you'll have 41 minutes to complete the listening section. Okay, so and now if you get 7, you will have 57 minutes. Well, you will be given extra time for the experimental tasks. So I repeat, note taking is important. Okay, so this is the type of note-taking skills that you need, or the note-taking strategy that you would apply in a lecture if they're talking about homeschooling. Or it could be this one as well, whichever one you want. This would be the note-taking style you would apply in a dialogue or conversational based listening task where you have two people talking. Okay, so now some predictions. Let me give you some tips. Okay, now main idea. Pay attention to the first part of the lecture or dialogue. So basically, when the audio starts, be ready, because that is normally where the most important information is. Normally for non-native speakers, in order for them to start understanding something, they need a little bit of time. So maybe they start understanding something after the second or third sentence because they need to tune their hearing a little bit, get into the English rhythm of things. But TOEFL test creators know that. That is why a lot of questions and answers will be in the first sentence you hear. Be ready. When they start to be ready, when they start to speak, you need to get that information. Identify the main idea in the first sentence you hear. As in a normal essay, you will have to identify that important information. There will be distractors. There definitely will be distractors, as always. Okay, so now the professor. Okay, so you will be given choices. Some of those choices could say that the professor doesn't care, or the professor did a bad job. Now, listen here, very important. Any choice that implies anything negative about the professor in a lecture or in a conversation, okay, any choice that brings any negativity to the professor will always be the wrong choice. You can discard that option because the professor is perfect in TOEFL. The professor in TOEFL can't do anything wrong. Okay, so remember that the professor is always right. The professor is perfect. Anything negative or bad will always be the wrong option. Now, the rhythm. So you will listen to someone speaking, if it's a lecture, for example. So if you think about it, when they created the test, they wrote down a lecture or a script or anything like that. They took that lecture and they gave it to a person to read it and record the audio so that you can listen to it. So what are they reading? They're reading whatever was written down. And obviously it's not one continuous text. You have text with pauses, with white gaps. All these white gaps that are like essays, they're normal paragraphs. And as with any paragraph or essay style, you know that the most important information is at the beginning of that. So before, in the recording studio, when they created this TOEFL listening task for you, that person was reading, they saw white space, and they know that a new paragraph is coming. There is a slight pause, and they know that that's important information. So now when you hear a pause, you know what they're going to say is going to be a topic sentence and it's going to be important. So that's where you need to take notes, at the topic sentences as well. Okay, so when you hear that pause, be ready. Something important is coming, and there are going to be pauses. After a pause, you have topic sentence. Good. Now, colloquial English. Pay extra attention to strange phrases, jokes, or idioms. They're normally repeated later when you are asked a question. Okay, so pay close attention to colloquial English. Alrighty then. So there are three main different question types in the listening section of the TOEFL. You've got the main idea questions. Now, it is the first, listen, important, extremely important. It is the first question to be answered. Okay, so basically is you listen to an audio, and after that audio is finished, you will only hear it once, never twice, you will only hear it once, and then they will ask you a question. That first question is always going to be a main idea question. It's a fact, always, always. And where do you get that information from? It is the first thing they normally say. It's in the beginning. It's in those first two sentences that they give. That is the main idea. So that's why you have to be ready. Okay? Don't try. You have to, as soon as they speak, you have to be right taking notes already. As soon from the beginning. Not even as soon as possible. From the beginning. Yes or yes. So that's the main idea questions. If you have if you have 7 tasks to do, you will have 7 main idea questions, and all of them will be the first thing that is mentioned in the audio. So that is fantastic to know now. Great for you. You have predictions and you know exactly what they're going to ask you, and you know exactly when they're going to ask you. All you have to do is to be ready for that. Most people don't know that. So now the second question type would be details questions. So according to the audio, or what can be said about, etc., etc., or it could be a chart based, whether it's true or false. Okay, you have one area true and the other area false, or category based, one category and a second category. Now these are this is factual information, detailed questions from the audio that you heard. So now that's why it's extremely important for you to take notes. If you don't take notes, you're not going to do well with the detail. You're not going to do well at all, period. Now, inference questions. This is the third type. You remember what they are? Inference? With one clipper in one hand and a pair of scissors in the other, he was ready to do his job. What kind of job? Okay, so that is an inference question. So normally, the great thing is with an inference question, when they ask you that question, they repeat that piece of audio. So it would be the question, why does the professor say? And then you would listen to that piece of audio again. They would give you another chance. And then you have to infer why you think they said that. Okay, so if, for example, in the audio they say, we have to get on because we don't have a lot of time left. Okay, so imagine they say that. What can be inferred? That person is in a hurry. That can be inferred. They didn't say it, but you can logically understand that is the situation. Listen to the intonation too. Okay, what is the most likely conclusion? And they always repeat that piece of audio for you. You can identify them. Why did the speaker mention? Audio track repeated. What might the listeners do as a result of the lecture? You can also predict what they might do. Okay, when would this discussion most likely take place? Maybe they're at university, so it would be at university. They don't say they're at university, but you can hear there's a professor and students. The student would ask a question. Where is that happening? It's happening at university, or in class, at least. So that is how you would infer. So right now, you have main idea, details questions, and inference questions. We're going to look at much more detail into understanding a little bit more about these 3 types of questions for your listening task to help you get the best possible score. All right, so here we go with the next video. See you there. So here we are. We're about to look at the main idea question, which is one of 3 different question types you need to know when you do the TOEFL listening. Okay, some tips. Remember what I said. Okay, prepare yourself to capture as much information as possible before the listening starts. Be ready for it. This is a main idea question. The main idea is always going to be at the beginning of the speaking. It's going to be there at the audio. Okay, so the main idea of the listening will be presented in the first sentences of the listening task. It's always there. Now, the first question you will answer in your questions after every listening will always be the main idea question. So you know exactly what they're going to ask and you know when to listen for that specific information. Okay, and to show you, here are the first question of 3 different listenings. Let's see. Okay, so what is the lecture mainly about? If you look at that, it's the main idea. It's going to be in the first sentence. Okay, now then, okay, you've got more questions, etc., etc., and then you get to listen another audio. It could be a lecture or a conversation. Okay, so this is, why does the student go to see the professor? This is a conversation. When are they going to say that? At the beginning. They said it at the beginning. And as you can see, it's the first question again. And here you go. This is another audio, and it's the first question. What is the discussion mainly about? Okay, so these are facts. Okay, they happen so often that it's always like that. And that is why you can predict what, when, and where as well. So now, very good. Okay, so I've got some audio tracks for you here. Okay, now what I want you to do, I'm gonna read them out for you. Okay, so you listen. Okay, okay. So this is audio. Okay, this is from question 1. Okay, it is in the beginning. So here it starts. The audio starts. So today I want to go over the main points about what's called the electoral college. That is the way that presidents are chosen in the United States. So that's the first part of the audio track. Okay, so let's go to another audio track. Okay, another task. Okay, and this is going to be the beginning. You've got a woman and a man. I'm going to do the dialogue. Good morning, Dr. Blake. Sorry I'm running late. Oh, no problem, Angie. It gave me a bit of time to review your research proposal. Oh, good. So you had a chance to look at my proposal, and what did you think? That's the beginning of an audio. Let's look at another one. Okay, it's a professor. Alrighty then. It is the audio track will start like this, and they're all different. Yeah, they're all different audio listening tasks. They're independent. Okay, so this would be the start. You ready to take notes? You ready? Here we go. We've been concentrating on formal letters in business communications, but today I'd like to talk about some issues in using email. And then the audio would continue. Okay, so these are the first parts. So let's compare them. Okay, so this is the first part of an audio. This is the first part of a different audio and the first part of a different audio. Okay, so we've got lecture, conversation, lecture, for example. No particular order, but it's just the way it is now. So let's look at the first question you are asked after the audio is finished. The first question that you already know. What is the lecture mainly about? Okay, let's look at this one here. Audio script task 1. What is the lecture mainly about? A method in Alaska for ensuring fair election results. An important feature of the US presidential election. The essential criteria used for choosing a candidate. A comparison of different voting systems. Okay, so that's the first question. And if you took notes, you would know what that answer would be. Okay, so now let's carry on to B, or to the second one here. Okay, you've got the conversation. Good. Okay, I'm not going to read it again. You can see it right there in front of you. Okay, so which one is it? Okay, the question is, why does the student go to see the professor? What's the reason? Okay, the reason. Did she go to apologize for arriving late? Turn in her proposal to the professor? Okay, to get help analyzing statistics or discuss improvements in her proposal? Okay, so maybe you're doubting between to apologize, okay, and possibly the last one, to discuss improvements for a proposal. Okay, so now which one do you think it is? And finally here, okay, so the answer is always in the beginning of the audio tracks. What is the discussion mainly about? Okay, we're talking about emails there. So now what would the answer be? We've been concentrating on formal letters in business communications, but today I'd like to talk about some issues in using email. The procedures for sending email messages in the business world, option A. The etiquette to use when writing a formal business letter, that was B. The reasons for using email instead of formal letters, or D, the types of email used in the business world. Okay, so obviously the answer is in all these parts here. The beginning. That is why you have to be so careful and get ready, because if you're not ready, you're not going to get the notes for that and you're not going to be able to answer these questions. Okay, so, let's go back. All right, so I'm going to leave it up to you to solve that, because here they are. You've got some practice time here if you wish. You can pause the video now and you can try to understand what the answers are. I'll see you in the next video. Okay, and get ready to learn the strategies you need to learn for the next question type. Okay, so see you there. Welcome back, friends and family. So we're going to look at the second question type for the listening section. Okay, and what you need to do to answer it correctly. So remember, there are three. This is the second one, detailed questions in the listening section. Okay, so this is the most common question you'll find in the listening section. Remember, the first question is always going to be the main idea question. And you already know the best possible tricks, tips, and strategies to answer that one already. Now we're going to look at detailed question. So paraphrasing obviously takes place. Not as much as in the reading section, though, because in the reading section they paraphrase all over the place. Okay, so now very often the right answer is not the exact match, but much rather the paraphrased version of it, as in the reading. But that is not as abundant and as abusive in the listening part as it is in the reading part, which is good news, but it still happens. Okay, so now this is a detailed question, for example. Okay, and what I want you to understand is how it works. I mean, what to be careful for. So, for example, distractors. You will hear exact match words in the listening that are exactly the same as some of the choices you're given to choose from. Now, the test creator is doing that on purpose to confuse you, obviously. Okay, so let's look at a question. According to the professor, who becomes an elector? And then you have your different options. Okay, so now I'm going to read it and you can see color-coded where the distractors are. Note that the most important information, as with normal essays, is found in the topic sentence. Okay, it's basically at the beginning of any paragraph. So this here is the beginning of a paragraph that the test creator is reading to record this audio for you. Okay, so the most important information is going to be at the beginning of when they're speaking. So I'm going to be the audio and I'm going to read it out for you. So here are your different choices, but you won't see this. Okay, first you will hear it all, and then afterwards you will be given the choices, the questions. Okay, so this is the listening script. First of all, what is an elector? Well, an elector is a person, a member of a political party, who has been chosen by that party in a given state. Okay, so this person, this elector, is pledged to his or her party's candidate for president. So in any state, there are several electors. Now, the number of electors in a state is equal to the number of US senators plus the number of US representatives in that state. Blah, de, la, de, la, de, la, de, da. Okay, so let's look at the distractors that they threw in there. So this is from an actual test. Okay, so according to the professor, who becomes an elector? So remember, you won't have this text. All you will have are your notes. But when you listen, you have to be ready for this. A US senator or representative, that is a choice. So You would have heard US Senator and you would have heard US Representative. You would have heard both of them. They might even be in your notes. So that is a very attractive option to choose, extremely attractive. Okay, so then trained member of public. So maybe you didn't understand the first part, okay, and you just heard member. Imagine you just heard member and you didn't hear political party, okay, then you might choose member because that's what you heard. You heard member. Or then a member of a political party, which would be the correct one, because it is asked. It's like, what is an elector? So if they're asking what is an elector, they're going to tell you the answer of what an elector is. It is a member of a political party. It is at the beginning of the audio. That is why it's so important for you. At the beginning of this paragraph, it is right after that moment of pause and they start speaking again. That is where you would find this information at the beginning. Okay, so now it is a member of a political party, and here is another distractor. Okay, a candidate. Okay, you don't hear political office, but you hear candidate. Okay, so this person is an elector, is pledged to his or her party's candidate for president. So you might choose candidate. So what I want you to see here is that all the options look attractive. Some look more attractive than others. Okay, but now you understanding where the most important information is normally, that they use distractors, they try to confuse you, that you have to take notes, you have to be ready at certain times. Okay, you can understand the psychology of the test creator. It gives you better odds of doing much better in this type of test, the listening paper. Okay, so we're going to look at the last type of listening in a moment. Okay, so I'll see you in the next video. Wait for you there. Okay, we're going to look at the third and the last question type of the listening section. Okay, so we've looked at the main idea question, we've looked at the details question, and now we're going to look at the inference question. Okay, so let me go back. The inference question. Now, it is something, as in the reading, that wasn't explicitly said in the listening, and is something that is obvious, and you have to make the most logical conclusion or educated guess based on the information that you heard. So that piece of listening will be played again before you answer this type of question. That's a good thing, isn't it? So now how do you recognize this type of question? Okay, well, first of all, they always repeat the audio. They say, listen again. Why does the professor say this? And you will hear that piece of audio. What can be inferred about, etc., etc., etc. Okay, and you'll hear the audio again. Okay, why did the speaker mention? What might the listener do as a result of the lecture? You need to infer this, make educated and logical conclusion, guesses to what you think the most likely outcome would be. Okay, so now, for example, let's look at this one here. This is a piece of audio. The professor. I'm going to read it so you will hear this. Okay, now I would like to have you get into groups of 3 or 4. I'm going to pass out an assignment sheet, and I would like you to decide in your group how you're going to approach the problem set in the handout. I think the handout is self-explanatory, but if you have questions, I'd like you to work out a solution of your own. Okay, so then you read in the question, you read and hear. Okay, what can be inferred about the professor? Okay, so he wants the students to make group decisions without his help. He does not expect the students to understand his explanation. He wants the students to come to the solution he thinks is correct. He is not concerned with helping students learn how to approach problems. So let's have a look at those possibilities. Do you remember when I said that the professor is perfect? The professor can't do anything wrong. It's the model vision of what the perfect professor would be. That is the TOEFL professor. That is the professor you listen to and you hear in your TOEFL exam test. So let's look at our options again. Okay, so now let's start from the bottom up. He is not concerned with helping students learn how to approach the problem. That would be a very bad professor. So no, not even a possibility. So let's forget about D. He wants the students to come to the solution he thinks is correct. So that would also not be a good, wouldn't be a good professor either. Okay, so that one is out. He does not expect the students to understand his explanation. That's another trait of an extremely bad teacher or professor. So we're left with A, which is the most obvious answer. But we know, because we know that the TOEFL teacher, the TOEFL professor is perfect, we can already eliminate 3 options, B, C, and D, because we know that, because you're here, because you're doing this course. All right, so he wants the students to make group decisions without his help. That is what we can infer. I'd like you to work out a solution on your own. It's not a bad, he just wants them to work out without his help. Okay, it's part of the teaching, I assume. But it doesn't mean he's a bad professor. And that is what we can infer. Okay, it's not clearly stated in the audio that you heard, but you can make that logical conclusion. That is a most likely outcome of what that lesson was supposed to be like. Supposed to be, we're speculating because it's an inference question. Okay, so very good. So that was the inference question and some tips on how to approach the inference style questions. Okay, so let's get ready for the next part. Okay, and I'll see you in the next video. Welcome to the speaking section of the TOEFL test. Okay, so remember that you have 17 minutes to complete all the questions in the speaking section. Okay, there are 4 tasks that make up the speaking section. The first one is the personal choice question. Okay, it's where you will hear a question, you will also see the question, you have to answer the question. You will have time to prepare and you need to speak for a certain amount of time. Now, the second type of question is a campus announcement question. That is where you will read something, you will listen to an audio track, then you will have to make notes, obviously, while you listen, okay? And then you will be given time to prepare, and you will have to speak for a certain amount of time. So you will read, listen, and speak in the second one. The third type of question is a general to specific, and the fourth one is the academic lecture. So it's important to note that, good, the TOEFL got renewed in August of last year, 2019. We're in 2020 right now. Okay, and the course you're doing right now is the most updated version of the test, of the courses that you can find online. Because most other courses are still in the old format. This is the latest one and it's the newest one. This is the type of test that you will be doing if you want to take the test now, or from now onwards, until they change something again. Now, why did they change the TOEFL format? They changed it because people complained and said it was too difficult. Because in the old TOEFL speaking section, there were 6 tasks. Now there are only 4. So they removed 2 tasks, and now you only have 4. There are still the same tasks, but you've got 2 tasks less to do. So now the thing is, because it's a recent change within context, you might possibly still find an old question on the day you do the test. Okay, so that is why I encourage you to look at the old TOEFL speaking section, just to be safe. You never know, but most likely you will get the new version. That is the one they're giving out nowadays, but be ready that you could get some questions from the old test. Okay, so with that being said, wow, red, very important. that note-taking is essential in the speaking. Okay, so it is a must, it is not optional. I'm going to give you all the strategies. What you have to do is you have to memorize these strategies and apply these strategies. This is the best way for you to get a higher score, the highest possible score you can get. Okay, and the best way to do that is to apply these strategies. Please listen to me. If you don't, you're not going to get a high score. Okay, so now we're going to move on and we're going to look much more detail at the 4 different question types that you're going to find, the strategies that you need, and how to answer them in the next video. I'll wait for you there. Okay, now let's have a look at task 1 of the speaking section. This will be the first question you're asked in the speaking section. There are different types of task 1 questions. We're going to have a look at them quickly. First and foremost, the important thing, it's the same for all of these type of questions in task 1 of the speaking section, okay, is that you will have 15 seconds to prepare and you will have to speak for 45 seconds. Now you will get one of these 4 different question types. Okay. Now you're gonna have to agree or disagree. You're gonna get possibly a preference style question. You could get 3 choices and you have to choose one. Or you're gonna have to describe the advantages or disadvantages of something. Those are the 4 new main question types in the TOEFL speaking task 1. Now you might see one of the 2 older questions from the previous TOEFL exam. Okay, they're if or imaginary kind of questions, or a description and explanation kind of question. So as you can see, there are a lot of different types of questions you can get in the task 1 of the speaking section. But don't worry, because you only need one strategy. One strategy that I'm going to teach you now can be applied to all of them. Maybe a minor change, but it's the same idea. So let's have a look at all 4 of them. So now, okay, so you have to, for the strategy you need, follow the strategy for task 1. Okay, first of all, you state your main point or your answer. Okay, you would say, I agree or I disagree, or in my opinion, this idea is better, or I believe that, or while some may agree, I believe that, or some might disagree, I believe that. That is just giving your answer. Okay, and then the second part is going to be your reason and your supporting example. The third part is going to be your second reason and your example of that reason. Okay, and then finally, and this last part is optional, in your 45 seconds. So in your 45 seconds, okay, all right, you have given your answer. Okay, I agree or I disagree. Okay, and then you've given a reason of why you agree, and you've given an example of that reason. Okay, and the second reason, you've done the same. And then if you want, if you still have like 3 or 4 seconds left, remember you have 45 seconds you have to speak, you can give your conclusion, and that's why I disagree that, etc., etc., etc. Now this is not optional. You don't get any extra points for that conclusion, but you are tested on 1, 2, and 3, your answer and your 2 reasons with your example. So you will have 15 seconds. So what note-taking strategy would you need? So what is going to happen is that you are going to hear a question and you will see it on the screen. So as soon as you can, what you have to do is to write down A, as you can see here, A, R1 and R2. That is your note-taking strategy. While they're speaking, you quickly, it takes you 2 seconds to write that down. Okay, and you listen to what the question type is, and you can already start taking notes and prepare, because remember, you only have 15 seconds to prepare before you have to speak for 45 seconds. Every additional second you have to prepare helps you to prepare better and give a better answer. Okay, so it would be your answer, I agree or I disagree, my reason 1, and my reason 2. So For example, here's a sample question. Let's look at a sample question, okay? Now, this is an agree or disagree type of question. So the question is, you're going to hear it and you're going to see it on the screen. Do you agree or disagree that students should bring a cell phone to school? And that is the question. Everything else is always the same. Use details and examples to support your explanation. Another good thing is that the person speaking and you're listening to speaks really slowly. So it gives you a little bit more time. But as soon, okay, so basically, agree, disagree, cell phone at school. And while they're still saying that, you already start taking your notes. I agree. Reason 1, memories. Reason 2, emergency. Those are the important things. Okay. Now remember that you need to give examples as well of your reasons. Reason 1, memory. Photos. Emergency, sick. This is what you need. This is the note-taking template that you need in order to give. If you still have extra time at the end, then you can say, that's why I believe that it's not a good idea to take your cell phone to school. Or that's why I agree that taking or bringing your cell phone to school benefits everyone. You will have 15 seconds to prepare and 45 seconds to speak in. So this is the note taking. I agree. Okay. So I agree that students should bring their cell phone to school. And mainly because we spend a lot of time at school. And the more time we spend at school, the more memories we can create. And I think it's a great idea for people to be able to take photos and reminisce when they need to. Furthermore, imagine you have an emergency situation and you can't call your parents. It would be a great idea to have your phone with you. If you're sick like this, you can call your dad, he can come and pick you up. And that's why taking your phone to school, your cell phone to school, benefits everyone. So that is a very quick and improvised kind of answer, but the structure is the important thing here. So I recommend that you look at this question and you take 15 seconds to prepare. You record yourself and you have to have a stopwatch because you have to practice. You have to be able to speak for 45 seconds. Okay? And if you don't know what examples to give, just ask yourself why. Because if you ask yourself why, you're going to naturally want to say because, and you're going to support your reason. It naturally happens. So if you're a little bit blank, ask yourself why. When you're taking your notes, ask yourself why. Start taking your notes as soon as you can. The question is finished there. Taking your photos, that's finished there. Everything else being said is you taking notes already and preparing to give your answer. Okay, so that is a sample question for agree or disagree. Remember, there are 3 more. Okay, so let's look at a preference style question. Question would be, do you prefer finding information by reading books or searching the internet? Note taking, use details and examples to support your explanation. So they speak much slower than I do, which gives you more time. And then I will say you have 15 seconds to prepare your answer. Beep. 15 seconds, you will see the clock count down, 15 seconds, and then you will have to speak for 45 seconds. So the note-taking template is going to be the same. It's going to be A, reason 1 and reason 2. Reason is fast, and for example, my example. Okay, supporting example or supporting reason. Reason 2, complete, supporting example. Okay, or reason. Okay, so it's going to be, do you prefer finding information by reading books or searching the internet? Quick, my answer is internet. Okay, my reason is because it's faster. You have access to information instantaneously. Okay, and then my reason 2 would be it's because it's complete. If you had to look up for information in books, it might be limited or dated, whereas online information is updated and it's more recent and it's it's unlimited. You have the world at your fingertips. That's why I believe that searching for information on the internet is much better than in books. So that's why, remember, that is optional. That is if you have a few seconds to kill. If you're at 40 and you have 5 seconds left, you can say that instead of silence and just waiting for the clock to go down. Okay, so that is a preference style question. You can see the note-taking template is exactly the same as the previous one. Now you have a multiple choice style question. The note-taking example is exactly the same template. You have your answer. University decides to remodel the dormitory and add a new space to it. Which space do you recommend to add in your dormitory? So you have three options. Basically, you choose one, and you give two reasons and supporting examples. It's the same as all the other before. So even though the question types are slightly different, don't be worried. The note-taking template and the way you're going to answer is going to be exactly the same. So this was number 3. Number 4 is slightly different. Okay, so it's the same, but it's different. Okay, let me explain. Here you have answer, reason 1 and reason 2. Okay, but the advantage and disadvantage one, instead of advantage and disadvantage, you have your opinion. I recommend always saying both. Advantage and disadvantage. Let's listen to this question. Your university is planning to allow students to watch TV in their dormitories. What is your opinion and why? What are the advantages and disadvantages of watching TV in dormitories? Include reasons and examples to support your response. So instead of answer, it's going to be your opinion. Your opinion, I recommend, it should be both, because it's easier to think of one thing that is an advantage and one thing that is a disadvantage, instead of thinking of two possible advantages and two possible disadvantages. Okay, so it's easier to come up with that, to think of one instead of two. Okay, so it's going to be your opinion. My opinion is both. Okay, I think there are both advantages and disadvantages to watching TV in their dormitories. One advantage is that you can relax. Okay, you can socialize a little bit more instead of always studying. Okay, one disadvantage could be that it's a distraction. You're at university. All the time you're there, you need to be productive, and you'll be less productive if you're wasting time watching television. So they both have advantages and disadvantages, and that's why. If you have time, that's why it is optional. And if you get any questions from the old test, okay, so questions from the old test would be, if you had a lot of money, what would you do? Example, okay? So now you would give your answer. I would help other people. Reason 1, because they've helped me. Reason 2, because I make the community better, blah, 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 blah. So you apply the same note-taking template to all the different types of question. One minor exception being the advantage and disadvantage one, where you choose both. You give one advantage, your reason and example. Okay, one disadvantage, your reason and example. So that would be how you would approach task 1 of the speaking section. Practice makes perfect, friends and family. Okay, so practice taking notes in 15 seconds. You've got thousands of questions online for the TOEFL. And practice being able to speak for 45 seconds, providing the necessary information that you need to provide, understood by in this note-taking template. Okay, so we're going to move on to task 2, which is a little bit more interesting. Okay, I'll see you in the next video with more fantastic strategies for you to get the best possible score in the speaking section. See you there. Okay, we're going to have a look at what strategy you need to answer the task 2 of the TOEFL speaking section. This is the second question you will be answering in the TOEFL speaking section. Okay, so let's look at a quick structure. Okay, so we're going to look at the quick structure. Then we're going to look at a real example of that question. Afterwards, after that, we will look at the strategies you need to answer that question to the best of your ability. Okay, so let's have a look quickly. So first, there is a reading. First, you read a short campus announcement, an article or a letter in the campus newspaper. It's always campus related. It is about 100 words long, okay, and you will have 45 seconds to read it. So basically, I'll get into more details later, but here, when you see that reading, your job is to identify the change. What is changing? It's very important to get that. Okay, after the reading, you will listen. You will hear two people have a conversation. So now remember that there is a change that you read. So in the conversation, they're either going to agree or disagree with the change, and they're going to provide their reasons why they either agree or disagree. It could be that they agree or disagree, or it could be that one of them agrees or disagree. Okay, after that, you will get the question. The question is always going to be the same. It is, so please provide the opinion of the speaker and the two reasons they provide. So you would also include the change that happens in the campus. So now obviously you will have 30 seconds to prepare for this, and you'll have to speak for 60 seconds. So we're going to look at the strategies that you need to be ready to answer this kind of question. Don't be intimidated, because as long as you have the strategies and you're taking notes, you will be fine. Okay, so let's have a look at a real example of this specific task. Okay, so now,
adjusting the microphone.
okay, don't worry about that.
In this section of the
this is the old version because there's no new software, so the question is exactly the same, so don't worry.
Please listen carefully. In this question, you will read a short passage about a campus situation and then listen to a conversation on the same topic. You will then answer a question using information from both the reading passage and the conversation. After you hear the question, you will have 30 seconds to prepare your response and 60 seconds to speak. The University of the Rockies is announcing its annual job fair. Read the announcement from the Career Services Center. You will have 45 seconds to read the announcement. Begin reading now.
Okay, so don't worry about reading that. That's not important. The important thing is that you understand the structure now. As you can see, you have about 100 words there. You have to read it, obviously, within 45 seconds. As you can see the clock there. And now you're going to hear two people have a conversation about this change. They're going to agree or disagree.
Now listen to two students as they discuss the announcement.
Are you going to register to attend the job fair?
I'm not sure. I'd like the experience of living abroad, but I need a well-paid job to pay back my student loan. Not all the jobs pay that well.
Some do.
Yeah, but the ones that pay well want experienced teachers. I've only done my student teaching, and that isn't enough.
But you're certified to teach science, so you can probably get a job just about anywhere. You know, because of the shortage of science teachers.
I still think I need more experience.
You also won first prize in the science teaching competition for your inquiry-based science project. Surely that'd count in the job market.
Maybe, but
I think that you ought to register. The service is free. The recruitment people come to campus, so you don't have to travel to an interview. You always said you'd like to work abroad, and here's the opportunity. Then, if you aren't offered anything, at least you get the experience of having interviews, and you can apply again after you get some teaching experience.
The man expresses his opinion about whether the woman should attend the job fair. State his opinion and explain the reasons he gives for his opinion. You may begin to prepare your response after the beep.
Okay, so now you have 30 seconds to prepare all the notes that you have taken. We're going to look at the note-taking strategy in a bit. After these 30 seconds, your job here would just be to organize everything. Not to think, but just organize everything and then speak for a minute. And that would be basically a quick overview of what it's like to do this specific task type. Okay, so now, very good. So let's carry on. Okay, so moving on here, let's look at the strategy. Okay, so when you get to the reading, you're going to write down C. C is for change. Remember, you get the reading. It's 100 words long, and you have to speak for 45 seconds. You have to read for 45 seconds. Okay, so 100 words. You have to read that within 45 seconds. Great. So now the R1 stands for the change. One of the reason. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Just going to take the headphones off. Okay. So as I said, C1. C here stands for the change that you get in the reading. Okay, the R1 stands for the reason for that change that you got in the reading. R2 stands for reading the second reason that you get for that change. So this is your note-taking strategy. C, change, reason 1, and reason 2. You're going to write down the change there, and you can write down reason 1 there and reason 2. So why write down the 2 reasons that you read? Because normally what they do is they sometimes, but not always, but they sometimes predict what the speaker is going to agree or disagree with. It's not always the case, but while you are there and you see the 2 reasons, it's good to have them. But you don't need reason 1 and reason 2 from the reading in your speaking, but what you do need is the change. Okay, after the reading, can you remember that 2 people spoke? Exactly. Okay, so then you will get the listening. Okay, there were 2 people. This is the style of note taking that you're gonna take down. You're gonna a line down the middle and a horizontal cross line there. You're gonna write down man and woman, or man and man, woman and woman. Hey, if you're lucky, you might hear at the beginning of the audio of this conversation, hey Peter, hi Denise. So if you can, pro tip, write down Peter and Denise. Okay, this will be very helpful later down the line. If not, it's going to be man and woman. Alrighty then. So when they start to speak, it's obvious to hear what the opinion is. Okay, do they agree or disagree with the change in the reading? Now, afterwards, after they've given their opinion, they're going to give a few reasons, 2 reasons. There could be a third reason as well. Okay, but it's going to be reason and reason. And you're going to write down what the other person says. Normally, there's just one person who's doing all the talking, most of the talking. Okay, and the other person is just going to be like, okay, yeah, all right. It's not going to provide much information. But remember that you're taking notes. So take notes on both sides as much as you can. Take as many notes as you can. Okay, so moving on. So great, you've read, you've listened, you've got all your notes. Now you will have 30 seconds to prepare and organize your notes. Okay, so the thing is not to get distracted when you have to speak for 1 minute. How do you do that? You organize your notes by drawing 4 nice big circles around the important information of the notes that you've taken down. Okay, so now for example, as you can see, reason 1 and reason 2 I've crossed out because you don't need them in the speaking. Okay, it's just sometimes they're helpful to predict what the 2 reasons could be in the conversation, but that's not always the case. But hey, I'm here to teach you everything, no? So now, the first circle goes around the change that you read in the reading passage. The second circle goes around the person's opinion. Do they agree or disagree? The third circle goes around the reason they gave, the first reason they gave in the speaking conversation. And then, obviously, the final circle goes around the second reason they gave in the speaking conversation, the conversation they had. Okay, so now let's go. That is how you would organize. Maybe you also remember something and you could quickly write that down, or you would cross out something that you think is not relevant. So the time you have, the 30 seconds, is not going to think of what to say. You already have all the information you need. You already know what you need to say. It is you have 30 seconds there. Use it wisely to organize your speaking, organize your thoughts and speaking for the 60 seconds you have to speak. Great. So now it's time to speak. What do? We've got our notes. We're organized and we have to speak. So what you can do is you can pause the video right here, right now, and you can memorize this template, memorize these phrases, okay? And follow the timeline. Get a stopwatch and follow the timeline when you practice these questions at home. Okay, so look at the structure. The reading states that you talk about the change. First circle around the change. The reading states that there is a change on campus. Okay, now follow the timeline. The man's opinion or the woman's opinion, Peter's opinion, Stacy's opinion, doesn't matter. Okay, talk about etc. etc. So there you would talk about the second circle. Okay. Peter, he, man or woman or Stacy, provides two reasons. First reason is the third circle, and the second reason would be the last circle. Maybe they have a third reason too, but that would normally be too much. You have to only speak for 1 minute then. If you have extra time, you can give a conclusion. You don't get extra points for giving a conclusion. Okay, so don't worry about that. But what you do need to include are these essential pieces of information. The change in the reading, the opinion, reason 1 and reason 2. It's always going to be like this. Always. Never changes. Okay? So this is exactly the strategy and the timeline to give the perfect answer, to get the perfect score for this task. Obviously, your English needs to be at a reasonable level as well to be able to provide these specific pieces of essential information. But assuming that you have that, then you will get the perfect score for this question type. Task 2. Okay, so there are two more. There are two more question tasks left, 3 and 4. Now we're going to look at more strategies to help you answer these questions the best possible way you can. I'll see you in the next video. See you there. Okay, let's look at task 3. Okay, of the speaking section. Okay, this is there are two more, 3 and 4. And we're going to look specifically at number 3. And we're going to do it similarly to the one we did before. I'm going to give you a brief overview of the structure. And after that, we're going to have a look at a real example. After the example, don't try to answer the question. After the example, we will look at the strategies that you need to answer this the best possible you can. All right, so here we go. Now the structure is that again you get a reading, and again you will have to listen, but this time you listen to a lecture. The lecture is about the reading. They're obviously connected. After that you will get a question. They will ask you a question. You will have 30 seconds to prepare. In these 30 seconds, what you need to do is just organize your notes, and then you'll have to speak for 60 seconds. Okay, so now if you look at T and D, T stands for title, D stands for the definition of the title. Okay, because imagine this is the reading they give you. It's always going to be a title, and then they're going to have a definition of that, and they're going to have examples of that. But you have the title. You have to write that title down as soon as possible because you need that later in your speaking, and you have to write down the definition as soon as possible because you're going to need that in your speaking. And later, while you still have time left, take a few notes of the examples that they give you here. Okay, so now after this, obviously you will listen to the audio, the lecture. It's a 2-minute long lecture, and while they are giving the lecture, you have to take down notes, obviously. So let's have a quick look at that real example. Okay, so test 1.
Adjusting the microphone.
Okay.
In order to adjust your microphone volume, Please answer the practice question below using your... In this section of...
Don't wanna. Okay, so now we're gonna go to that type of question. Good, which is this one.
Please listen carefully. In this question, you will read a short passage on an academic subject and then listen to part of a lecture on the same topic. You will then answer a question using information from both the reading passage and the lecture. After you hear the question, you will have 30 seconds to prepare your response and 60 seconds to speak. Read the passage about misconceptions in mathematics. You have 45 seconds to read the passage. Begin reading now.
Okay, so don't worry about reading and answering the question. That's not the point here. The point here is for you to understand the structure. Okay, so as you can see, you have a clear title. And after that title, you have a definition of that title. After that definition, you have some examples. Okay, so your job here is that you need to write down that title as is as soon as possible and capture the definition as soon as possible, because you will have to write that down in here. Title, definition, and here your definition would go. Okay, and you can write down some examples of that as well. As you can see, the clock, 45 seconds, audio.
Now listen to part of a lecture on this topic in a math education class.
Misconceptions about simple notions in arithmetic are not readily given up. So, for example, a child who believes that 1/4 is larger than 1/2 will not let go of this misconception when he or she gets back an assignment full of red correction marks. The child will let go of this misconception when he or she fully understands fractions. So, how do we develop this understanding? I think this situation is partly caused by the practice in many schools of teaching mathematics by rote. In other words, children are taught to memorize a formula, to practice using that formula, and then go on to the next one. Children start to believe that math is boring and work through problems without understanding the nature of the concepts. So what happens is that kids can work a problem only if they remember the formula. Using the rote method of teaching doesn't take into account the child's pre-knowledge or informal knowledge of mathematics. Even a small child can tell the difference between a whole cookie and a half a cookie. So using this informal knowledge is a very important part of helping children learn fractions, or other math concepts for that matter. Teachers tend to forget they must put these concepts into daily situations that children can relate to. Using real objects, children can come up with the formula themselves. And having done that, the children learn and understand the formulas better. It's also true that teachers too often assume that children understand the mathematical symbols being used. For example, the symbol for percentages. Unfortunately, too often that is an incorrect assumption.
Question time.
The professor describes the mistakes that are made in teaching children mathematics. Explain how these mistakes relate to the problems that children have in understanding fractions. You may begin to prepare your response after the beep.
Now you have 30 seconds to organize all the notes that you took throughout the listening and obviously the reading as well. We have a template that we're going to look at, and it's going to help you provide the best possible answer. Okay, so the idea here is for you to show the relationship between the reading and the listening. Okay, so I'm going to stop that for a sec there. Okay, so here we are. Okay, so now as you saw, you got the reading, got the listening question, 30 seconds to prepare, and you have to speak for 60 seconds. Okay, so now your note taking is going to be T for title. You write down the title. D for definition, the definition of that title. Okay, and if you have time, which you should, you have 45 seconds to read it, write down some key notes. Take down some key notes from the remainder of the reading. Moving on. Okay, so we already spoke about this. T, title, D, definition. Write down quickly exactly what you see. Yes, we talked about that. Okay, try to understand as much as you can from the reading, but it's not the objective to understand it all. Objective, title and definition. Good. Now, then you get to listening. It's a 2-minute long listening. Wow. So it's impossible for you and it's impossible for me to remember or write down everything there. You can't. You just can't. It's impossible. So you don't want to write down everything you hear because you can't. You want to write down the keywords that help you understand the different ideas, okay, and help you remember it when you have to deliver your speech. So this is why your note taking is going to be fundamental here, because most of your speaking is going to come from the lecture and the notes that you took down. Okay, and the more notes you have, the better, because you can always discard some notes when you have your 30 seconds to prepare, the least relevant ones. Okay, so your note taking would be T for title, D for definition, E. This is everything from the lecture. Everything you heard would come down here. Okay, so now the question is almost always the same, or it's nearly always the same. It's going to basically ask you, using an example provided in the lecture, explain the title of the article, explain what that is. Okay, you have 30 seconds to prepare. Now, these 3 circles organize your notes and that you can clearly see the structure so that you can speak clearly and effectively. 3 circles. The first one around the title, the second one around the definition, and the third, you will have a few circles, I imagine, around all the most important parts of the lecture. Okay, so now this is the template that you are going to use. Okay, as you can see, they're color-coded. You can memorize this. The article is about the definition that you wrote down, that you got in the reading, which the passage defines as, or defined as, the definition that you got. Okay, so then the professor provides an example, if you want, okay, to illustrate the definition of the title. Just 1 or 2 words, okay? You don't have to go into too much detail here. Okay, so he or she states that here is where all the speaking basically happens, because this is going to take you, what, 10, maximum 15 seconds. Then you have like 45 seconds left. We'll look at time management now. He states that, and then you have to provide all the information that you got from the lecture until it basically finishes, until your time is up. Okay, and so the example clearly illustrates that is optional. That is if you have extra time, which I don't think you will. Remember, the lecture was 2 minutes long, okay, 120 seconds long. So you should start speaking about number 3, which is everything you got down from the lecture, when the clock hits 43 seconds. Okay, remember that the clock counts downwards. You're going to want to spend about 40 seconds on all the information you got from the lecture. Okay, so the conclusion is optional, but if you want to add it, you need to add that conclusion 3 minutes. When you see 3, that is when you start speaking about the conclusion, but you don't have to. Okay, that is optional. So this is exactly the strategy that you would need to apply to get the best possible score for task 3 of the speaking section. Okay, so we looked at an example, we looked at the note-taking template, we looked at another speaking template, we looked at how you need to organize your notes. Okay, and if you want to take notes, take better notes, you have to practice. This is not, I can't just say, hey, now take better notes. No, the more you do it, the better you get. If I could, I would give you the ability, but unfortunately, I can't. If I could, I would, but I can't. So you need to develop that ability. Take notes, listen, take notes. Okay. So we're going to move on to part 4, which is the last task of the speaking section. Okay. And it doesn't get any more difficult than this. Not that it's difficult, because now that you have strategies, you know exactly what to expect. Okay, so I'll see you in the next lesson where we look at task 4 of the speaking section. Okay, let's look at the last task of the speaking section, task 4, the academic lecture. Okay, so the structure is that you're going to listen to a lecture. There's no reading. You're not going to read anything anymore. You're just going to listen to a lecture. So basically, you have to take notes as always. Alrighty then. So the lecture is about 1.5 to 2 minutes long. Okay, you'll see and you'll hear the question. You will have 20 seconds to prepare, and you'll have to speak for a minute. So in those 20 seconds, all you have to do is organize your notes. In those 20 seconds, you don't have to think. You don't want to be thinking about what you have to say. What you have to be doing is organizing yourself. Okay, so the lecture is about 1.5 to 2 minutes long. It's about an academic term or a concept. It is illustrated with normally, okay, so it starts off with, okay, today we're going to talk about blah, title, which is blah, 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 definition. Okay, so let me give you an example. Okay, so imagine this is a lecture. Okay, so today's lecture is about marketing. Okay, so that is the lecture, that's the title, which can be defined as different means of attracting new possible customers to any business. That was the definition. Okay, and then after that, what you're going to have is you're going to have subtopics. Remember, the topic is marketing. Then you have subtopics. What is a subtopic for marketing? A subtopic could be online marketing. So then it will introduce online marketing, okay, and it will define online marketing, and it'll give an example of online marketing. So look at the structure. Topic, definition. Subtopic, definition, example. How many subtopics can you get? You could get 1, 2, 3, or 4 subtopics. That depends on the lecture, but you could get a variety of number of them. Okay, and sometimes what they do is they give you the topic, marketing, the definition, subtopic, online marketing, and they give you an example of that, and then they jump over to traditional marketing like newspapers. Okay, they give an example and they continuously talk about newspaper marketing, for example, for the rest of the lesson. So if they talked about that the whole time, what do you think the question is going to be about? It's going to be about newspaper marketing, for example, or traditional marketing. So what you have to practice here is the ability to see the structure or the flow of a lecture. See how they start with a topic, definition, subtopic, definition, example. Subtopic, definition, example. Or maybe it is topic, main topic, definition, subtopic, definition, examples of one subtopic. Okay, so that is the best thing you can practice here, is listen to loads and loads of lectures. You have thousands online. Okay, specifically for TOEFL, it's the old TOEFL part 6. If you look for for TOEFL part 6 speaking, you will get hundreds and hundreds of these 1.5 to 2 minute lectures where you can practice taking notes. The more you do it, the easier it's going to be. The first time is going to be very hard. It's going to be overwhelming. The second time is going to be easier. Trust me, it always happens, because now you will be practicing on how to take notes. Okay, and how are you going to answer this? Well, there is no specific template, because that would depend on the amount of subtopics you get. Okay, but basically an overall template would be, okay, so you state the lecture, subject, and details. So the lecture was about marketing, which could be defined as different means of attracting new possible customers to your business. Okay, then you would state the first example. Okay, the first example would be, for example, if you need to grow your business, etc., etc., etc. Okay, a subtopic could be, as we already told you, online marketing. Online marketing is the new digital way of attracting new customers. Good. Good. So now you have the subtopic and the definition. You can get examples like, Facebook, Instagram, Google Ads are all different ways to attract new customers online. Okay. Next subtopic, traditional marketing. Traditional marketing is one of the oldest marketing prospects or marketing topics that's been around forever. Okay, I'm just blabbering, but I'm giving you the structure. And it can be seen in newspapers or maybe television, for example. And it could jump to another topic, another subtopic, which could be, for example, mouth to mouth. Okay, word of mouth. I apologize, word of mouth, which is another means of marketing. Word of mouth is probably considered to be the most loyal means of marketing ever. Okay, so then it's time to the question. Then you will get the question. So you had one topic, 3 equal subtopics. So please describe, the question is going to be how marketing affects our lives. So you would talk about everything there. Okay, if it's everything about one subtopic, it's going to clearly say, please talk about online marketing and how that affects our lives, for example. Okay, so when you have 20 seconds, what you need to do is you need to organize your notes like this. When you have your 1 minute to speak, you speak for 1 minute. Cross out any additional notes that you think aren't as relevant. Okay, so that is the strategy you need. Okay, and if you apply the strategy and you take notes, you are going to do extremely well. So well done for finishing the speaking section. We're going to look at 2 more things, which is going to be part of the writing task, and it's going to be fantastic. You'll see the strategies we will learn there, and then you'll be ready to take the TOEFL. Okay, see you in the writing class. All right, here we are. We're going to have a look at the writing part, the writing section of the TOEFL iBT exam. There are 2 parts. Let's have a quick look. The TOEFL writing section consists of 2 parts. First is the TOEFL integrated essay. You will read an article and then you will hear a lecture on the same topic. Okay? The lecture will challenge the argument made in the reading. Your essay must explain how the lecture casts doubt on the reading. You have to show how they disagree, because they always disagree. Okay? You will be given 20 minutes to write your essay. You should write between 280 and 300 words. So that's the first one. You will read something, you will listen to something. Based on what you read and what you heard, you will have to write an essay of at least 280 words. Okay, now you have 20 minutes to do this in. The second part. The second is the independent essay. This is a standard essay. You are asked your opinion on a topic related to a personal, academic, or professional issue. You have 30 minutes to write your essay. You should write about 300, at least 380 words, up to 400 words. Okay, so that's 100 words more than the first one, but you also have the first integrated essay, but you also have much more time to do it in. Okay, so that's a brief view. We're going to go into the integrated essay right now. Okay, so here we are. We're going to have a look at writing part 1, the integrated essay. In this part, they will give you a reading that you have to read. Okay, so based on that reading, after that, you will get a lecture. Okay, so everything said in the lecture will be disagreeing with everything that you read in what the author wrote. Okay, it's black and white. So basically, if you look at your screen, you have the reading. You have the listening. Opinion, I like it. Or opinion, read. Then in the listening, the lecture is going to be the opposite of that. They're not going to agree with it. It's going to give a reason. This person is going to disagree with exactly that same reason. They're going to have another reason. Okay? Then the lecture is going to disagree with that reason as well. And it can go on and on. You can get 3 or 4 or even 2 different reasons. So when they give you the reading, okay, so what you have to do is you just have to skim through the reading. Don't worry too much now, okay? You have 3 minutes to read it. They give you 3 minutes to read the reading, okay? So do you remember where the topic sentences are, or the most important information at least, in any essay? It's going to be, the opinion is going to be the last sentence, okay? And it's going to be, they're going to be the first topic sentences of each paragraph. That's where the main important information lies. Okay, so now let's have a quick look. Okay, because when you have to write that, so opinion goes here, opinion. This is the note-taking strategy that you will use. Reason 1, that's a topic sentence, goes here. Reason 2, here. 3, there. Okay, focus on those main areas. That's all you need to do. And this is the note-taking structure that you will use. When it's time to listen, and you can use this to already predict what the lecturer is going to disagree with. If you have that, you know they're going to disagree with that. Okay, so it's great for you to be able to predict as well what the lecture is going to be about. And the lecture, they're going to give obviously more examples too. Okay, so now if we have a quick look. All right, so let's go to test 1 and let's go straight to writing.
Make sure your headset is on. This section measures your ability to use writing to communicate in an academic environment.
Yep. Okay, so basic instructions as always. Okay, so now let's carry on. Continue.
For this task, you will read.
So there's your reading. Okay, that's the reading you have there. You can see there's 1, 2, 3 paragraphs. It's a mini introduction, for example. Get your main ideas there. As you can see, you have 3 minutes to read it in. You get the main ideas, write them down. As we said here, opinion, reason 1, reason 2, reason 3. Okay, you're going to get the opinion, reason 1 or reason 2. In this case, reason 3, possibly as well. After this, don't worry too much about getting details. You know why? Because after you've listened to the lecture that opposes everything in here, that disagrees with everything in here, it will come back to you. They will show you this reading again, and you will have access to this reading when you write your essay. You'll be able to reference your reading. So that's why it's important just to get the main ideas, and they can help you predict what the lecture is going to be about. The lecture is going to oppose everything here. Okay, so now we're not going to sit around and wait for that. Okay, so after this, you get the lecture, and then it's going to oppose everything in there. Okay, so now this is going to be your note-taking strategy. Let's carry on. Okay, so this is the model. So, okay, opinion, agree, disagree, reason 1, agree, 2, disagree, 3, disagree. You can memorize this. So the article states that, and the author's opinion. There you go, that's the author's opinion. And provides 3 reasons of support. However, the professor explains that, then you write in that, you say that, okay? And refutes each of the author's reasons, okay? So the first one, the author's opinion, he refutes it with the lecturer's opinion. And then here, this is basically repeating everything based on how many different reasons there are. So first, the reading claims that, reason 1, the professor refutes is like to disagree, this point by saying that, you write in the listening's first reason. Second, etc., etc. Third, etc., etc. Sometimes you only have 2, sometimes you have 4, but you would repeat the structure. You can memorize this template. It's always going to be the same. It's never any different. Okay, so here there are, memorize this. You've got different words, for example, to refute, to oppose. Okay, Now, great. So this is exactly what you can expect in the writing task 1. Okay, it's always predictable, it's always the same. You can apply the strategy to get maximum points in task 1 of the writing part, the integrated essay. Now we're going to move on. See you in the next lesson where we're going to look at the independent essay. Okay, see you in class. All right, here we are. We're going to learn how to write an essay, an independent essay. And this is fantastic practice for a lot of different aspects of writing. Everyone needs to know how to write an essay. It's going to benefit you for life. And we're going to look at a fantastic structure, a template that you can copy that is going to benefit you and give you the highest possible score. So here's how the TOEFL independent essay works. So in the second writing task, okay, of the TOEFL, it is the second one. You'll be given 30 minutes to respond to a question, writing obviously. Okay, the question will ask you to state your opinion on a topic likely related to education, work, or life in modern society. So most students should write between 380 and 400 words. There has been studies that suggest that the more you wrote, the higher score you would get. But that is just one little mini detail of the marking criteria they use to score your essay. There is a task achievement. There is also how well it's structured. There are lots of different elements to consider. But a statistical survey suggested that the more you wrote, the higher score you got. But I wouldn't really take that into consideration at all. If you focus on 380 and your English is good, and you apply the template I'm going to give you now, you're going to get a fantastic score for your essay. Okay, so let's look at it. Okay, before we look at the writing introduction, let's look at what it would look like on the day that you're going to do it. Okay, so now this is an example right here, which we can see. Okay, you have read the question below. You have 30 minutes to plan. Oh, plan. You have to plan. Write and revise your essay. Typically, an effective response contains a minimum of 300 words. So you don't want effective, you want brilliant. So that's why you're doing 380. Yeah? Hell yeah. Okay. So as you can see here, you have the question here. Do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Okay, let me just put this here. I'm not looking at you. Okay, do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Childhood is the happiest time of a person's life. So you either agree or disagree with that. You can't do both, yeah? So just choose one. Okay, then you will have here, you will write, and if you look here, these are my amazing words. It's got a word counter, which you don't have to count anything. Look at what's happening there. It's counting the words as you type. Okay, so you don't have to count. That's convenient. Why don't all tests have this? Okay, so now you've got your word count. How many words? 380 at least. You're right. Well done. Okay, so you've got a little what you see is what you get kind of options here. Undo, paste, cut, etc., etc. And how much time do you have? You have 30 minutes. I stop the clock. Start the clock again. There's the time. It's going down. Okay, so in the first 5 minutes, what you're going to do is you're going to plan your essay. Do you agree? Yes. 2 reasons. Okay, and you're going to develop everything after that. All right, so now let's get this out of the way. And let's go back to the PowerPoint, friends and family. So now let's look at the perfect template that you can use to get a great score in the TOEFL. Now, the first part of your TOEFL independent essay must always be the introductory paragraph, the introduction. Follow this template, please. You need the hook. Go fishing, the hook. Now, this is an interesting sentence that introduces the general theme or topic of the essay. Okay, so a nice hook, something interesting, something that can capture your imagination. So your imagination is the limit, but you need to capture the reader's attention. Okay, so sentence 2, still the introduction. We're talking about the introduction. First element is the hook, second element is the main point. This is, in other words, your answer. Okay, so personally, I believe that children's lives are fantastic in this generation, for example. And then you would give your 2 reasons for that in the next element. Element 1, hook. Element 2, your answer or the main point, basically. Okay, and make it easy. While we're speaking about the main point, make it easy for the examiner who's correcting your essay to see your answer. Personally, I believe, or personally, it's my opinion that, okay, or I strongly believe, make it easy for me to see what the main point in your answer is. Finally, the last element of your introduction is going to be your thesis. Your thesis is where I feel this way for 2 reasons, reason 1 and reason 2, which I will explore in the following essay. You don't need to write anything else. Please include your 2 reasons instead of just saying 2 reasons. Include them. That would be your thesis. Okay, so that was your introduction. You need 3 elements in your introduction: the hook, the main point, and your thesis. Your hook, your answer, and your 2 reasons, basically. Don't give me any details. I don't want any details. I will read them later. Okay, how about the body paragraph? So you're going to have 2 body paragraphs. Okay, so because you have 2 reasons. Every body paragraph is a reason, and it is developed accordingly. So let's look at that. Next, you must write 2 body paragraphs that state your supporting arguments and example, your reasons, in other words. Use this template for your first body paragraph. And your second, you can use the same one. It's exactly the same thing. Your reasons and your words change, but the structure in the template is exactly the same. Sentence 1 is the topic sentence. That is your reason. Your reason is the key word. It has to be in the topic sentence. Now, this summarizes your first supporting reason. Begin with, first of all, okay? Then you give your reason. Sentence 2 to 4, okay? The explanation. This is, you explain what you mean, but you don't talk directly about any personal experiences yet. Okay, sentence 5 is a transition. Nice, easy transition. My personal experience is a compelling example of this. Okay, and sentence 6 to the end of that paragraph is going to be your personal example. An example from your life that illustrates this argument or your reason. Okay, so make it longer than the explanation part. Okay, so this is the explanation part, 2 sentences. Give it 3 sentences, okay, or even more, 4, that's fine. So what we did here, this template is designed to start with a main idea, a reason, and develop it into something transitionally logical, into something a little bit more accurate or defined. Okay, so you would do the same with the second paragraph, and then you would need to write your conclusion and the final part. So conclusions are easy. You just need to repeat your thesis and your 2 reasons. Okay, so basically you restate the thesis. Okay, in conclusion, okay, I strongly believe that nowadays generation childhood live a fantastic life for 2 reasons. They don't have any worries and their parents work hard. There you go. So there are the 2 reasons that I include in my conclusion as well. And that would be the end of it. Okay, so a few tips that you need to know about. Okay, so yeah, basically we just finished the course. Isn't that fantastic? Okay, so let me just cut back on to that final one. Okay, so getting back here. So a few tips. Please take time to prepare. You have to plan your essay. Okay, take 5 minutes to plan your essay. If you don't, you know how many essays I've corrected? A lot. You know that it's so easy for me to see when someone has planned their essay and someone hasn't. They're 2 completely different worlds. Plan your essay. Okay, so take take 5 minutes to plan your essay, okay, and leave about 5 minutes at the end to check your essay. Look to see if you followed this template. Look to see if you used good grammar, for example. Look to see if you made any spelling mistakes. And very important, a quick tip, when you check your essay before, okay, so you finished your essay, you've got some time, you check it, okay, look at the English of your essay. Forget that it's your essay. Because if you read your essay, you're going to want everything to be perfect. So your brain is going to play tricks on you and you're not going to see the mistakes. So when you look at that essay, look at an essay that has English on it. Forget that it's yours. Be neutral. Okay, don't be biased. Be objective. And that's the best way to check an essay. Friends and family, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for attending this course. And you've got loads of material online that you can practice with. Practice makes perfect. If you need to go over any of the strategies, you can always come back here and you can look at the different strategies that you need. Okay? And I know you're going to do well because now you have everything you need to get the best possible score in TOEFL. I congratulate you. Well done. Good work. Great stuff. Very proud of you. My name is Jan. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.